Hello everyone. If you are new to my channel, then consider liking and subscribing. It will make me feel wonderful if you do it, thanks. By the way, I also have a Luffy fan fiction channel. If you are interested, the link is in the description. Dragonslayer by KitsuneDragon. He said he saw great potential in my small body and he raised me. Because of him I lived, I learned, and I finally found someone I could call friend, even if he didn't call me the same. I am his son. I am his student, the Dragonslayer of Acnologia. I don't own anything. Adios.
Naruto and Kurama watched the four opponents surrounding them, the air blowing gently through the air. Azuma and Zanpakuto looked at one another and nodded. Azuma stamped his foot on the ground and moved his arms as if he were scooping something. 5 large tree roots sprouted out of the earth and Zanpakuto took a deep breath. Engine no Dogo, flame god's bellow. Zanpakuto unleashed a powerful blast of black fire from his mouth and the attack enveloped the tree roots that Azuma sent forth, transforming them into flaming whips. Kurama then turned and roared, resulting in a powerful shockwave which tore up the earth and shattered the flaming roots. Naruto then looked up and saw Kokuo in the air, descending upon the two of them with his hooves aiming to crush their skulls.
Futon. Daitapa. Naruto muttered before a great blast of wind struck the dolphin horse in his stomach and sent him flying through the air. Kurama snarled and jumped after his brother and planted his skull against the 5-tailed beast's chest. Kakuo gritted his teeth before wrapping his tails around Kurama's limbs and slamming him into the ground. The kitsune yelped in pain before growling and unleashing a torrent of flames, allowing the red fire to envelop his own body. Kakuo howled in pain as his tails were burned by the defensive-offensive move before Kurama sped towards him. Fire rocket. The 6-tailed kitsune roared and sent Kakuo flying through the air only for 2 tree roots to appear in his path and try to crush him. The kitsune lashed out with 2 of his tails, both coated in fire, and sliced through the tree roots as if they were made of paper. Kurama jumped and aimed to slam his tails down on Kakuo as the dolphin horse rose up to his feet. Kakuo looked up and quickly spun, a cloud of steam enveloping him and shielding him from the attack. Kurama retracted his tails, hissing in pain as the steam burned through his fur. Steam burns were some of the worst ways to be burned because it literally felt as if you were being cooked alive. Kurama took a deep breath and released a stream of fire, Kakuo countering with a stream of pressurized steam. The 2 attacks collided, causing an explosion of fire and steam, but Kurama raced through the smoke cloud to try and use it as a cover. However, Kakuo suspected his brother's move and lashed out with 3 of his tails, slamming Kurama to the left, right and then skyward before leaping and crashing his hooves down on Kurama. Kurama grunted as he felt his spine nearly shatter from the blow, but his healing factor in his kitsune form prevented that from happening. Kurama then fired a barrage of small fireballs and hit Kakuo in the stomach and sent him upwards. Kurama then caused his tails to extend as he landed, wrapping them around Kokuo's body and slammed him into the ground. "You should know better than to challenge me, Kakuo." Kurama snarled before holding Kakuo over his head and spinning him around before throwing him over to Naruto. The blonde Dragonslayer caught the transformed Exceed and slammed him into the ground. Kakuo gasped in pain before his tails wrapped themselves around Naruto's arms and legs. The Wind Mage was caught off guard by the move as he was suddenly heaved over Kokuo's head and slammed into the ground. A small crater formed from the attack and the blonde quickly recovered, though his back was now bearing a slight stinging sensation from the attack, before breaking free of the appendages and leapt at Kakuo. Kakuo got up and rolled to the side only for Naruto to suddenly put on a burst of speed and appeared to Kokuo's right. The dolphin horse's eyes widened as Naruto held a sphere of swirling magic energy in his hand. Energy Make. Rasengan. He slammed the attack into Kokuo's side and sent the beast spiraling through the air from the attack. Engine no Dogo. The attack of the Fire Godslayer raced through the air towards Naruto, but Naruto quickly spun around to face the attack and performed Kei's no Yaiba. Raising the wind blade, Naruto brought it down in an arc and a crescent of wind tore through the attack, parting the flames on either side of Naruto before causing a small explosion behind him. Zanpakuto leapt at Naruto and kicked him in the face, causing the blonde to skid backwards before the insane blonde punched Naruto in the stomach before swinging his leg backwards and brought it back for a sweeping, upward kick. Engine no Hojinka Kogeki, Flame God's Volcanic Eruption Strike. Zanpakuto's foot became coated in black flames, allowing the embers to trail behind his leg as it went to strike Naruto's chin. However, Naruto leaned back to avoid the strike and looked in mild surprise as the kick had expelled a powerful stream of flame when Zanpakuto had reached the area where his head had been. Naruto then went into a series of backhand springs before vanishing into the wind and appeared behind Zanpakuto. The Dragonslayer struck the Godslayer with a Rasengan and sent the Grimoire heart member spiraling through the air, but Zanpakuto managed to turn himself around and held out both hands. Engine no Hanabi, Flame God's Fireworks. A flurry of small fireballs, roughly around the size of a baseball, rocketed from his hands. Naruto jumped, twisted and turned as he avoided the attacks and made note of how the black fireballs released small explosions upon them, making contact with whatever surface they struck. Zancro had ended his barrage however as the blonde and forgot he was still in the air and slammed into a tree, causing the bark to crack. Naruto then felt movement to his left and ducked as a powerful punch from Han aimed to damage his head. Naruto then twisted and performed an uppercut and sent the armored Rune Knight captain skyward. Naruto then took a deep breath and unleashed a wind dragon. The serpentine wind reptile flew towards Han, but the Rune Knight captain quickly righted himself in midair before raising his fist and descended towards the wind dragon. Steam driver. The furnace on Han's back rattled before pressurized steam was forced through the armored glove and Han's punch increased in speed and power. The physical attack tore through the Furyuden with ease and continued towards the blonde Dragonslayer. Naruto jumped back and avoided the attack, a small crater resulting from the blow, only to have to twist to avoid a blast of black flames as Zancro attacked. Engine no Bansan, Flame God's Supper. A torrent of ebony flame coated Zancro's hands before taking on the shape of a pair of jaws. The mouth-shaped fire zoomed towards Naruto, but the blonde quickly went into a handstand and spun, unleashing a barrage of crescent-shaped wind blasts. Futon. Senpu Kyaku. Naruto cried and the attack crashed into Zancro's own, causing a small explosion of black fire. Naruto leapt through the smoke cloud and a gray-green magic seal appeared above Zancro as he leapt towards Naruto. Futon. Atsugai. A giant blast of pressurized wind forced itself down on Zancro, forcing the blonde kin of purgatory to the ground before a large dome of wind sliced into the blonde's body. Zancro roared and a pillar of black flames burst through the wind dome. The red-eyed member of Grimoire Heart cackled and licked his lips. "You really are strong. This is gonna be fun." Naruto's lips formed a frown beneath his mask. He hoped that the Futon Atsugai would shred the blonde, but it seemed that wouldn't be very effective. Naruto was then sent flying, a crack meeting his ears as his ribs creaked from the force they were met with. Han stood next to the area where Naruto was, a leg outstretched. "Keep your guard up, Fujin. I'd hate to end you so early," Han said. Naruto flipped in the air and the seal on his stomach pulsed and he sighed as he felt his ribs being mended back together. He then leapt to the side as a rude courtesy of Azuma was sent his way. Naruto then jumped and clapped his hands together and a blast of wind raced towards the brown-haired man. Azuma was sent flying through the air only to meet the ground as Kakuo landed on the man's back, courtesy of Kurama's attack. Kurama his brother and launched numerous fireballs from his jaws. Kakuo got up and stamped down on Azuma, an unnecessary requirement as the Grimoire Heart member gritted his teeth in pain before causing an explosion as he called upon the powers of the earth. Kakuo was sent flying through the air and Kurama avoided his fellow exceed and being invulnerable to fire, easily made his way through to the Grimoire Heart member and slammed his tails down on the man. Azuma raised his arms to block the attack and then gripped Kurama's tails and threw him away before thrusting his arm outwards. Tree roots erupted forth and began to explode along the length of the roots before encasing Kurama in fire. Azuma smirked only to narrow his eyes when the fires were forced into the jaws of the fire kitsune. The Grimoire Heart member had also forgotten that there were other enemies on the battleground, for Kakuo had crashed his head into Azuma's side and sent the explosion user rolling along the ground before sending a blast of pressurized steam after him. Azuma managed to go with the rolling movement and climb back onto his feet before holding out his hand and an explosion rocketed from the magic seal that formed in front of him. The explosion flowed like a river towards Kakuo, only for Kurama to land in front of his brother and eat the fire from the attack and reduce it to nothing. "You saved." Kokuo's surprise was ended, replaced with pain when the kitsune sent him to the ground with a tail strike. "Though we are enemies, you are still my brother, Kakuo. But I will not hesitate to stop you from taking me and Naruto into custody." The kitsune's speech was ended as Kurama was sent skidding as Han kicked him. Kurama wrapped his tail around the red armored man's waist and raised him into the air and slammed him into the ground. Han tried to get back up, but the kitsune threw Han away once more. Naruto doing the same with the blonde Godslayer, causing them both to meet in the air. Insert music. Naruto Shippuden Kokuten. Both fell to the ground after their collision, but Han got up faster than Zancro and picked up the Grimoire Heart member and threw him up. Han followed after his opponent and raised his leg high above his head. Steam expelled from the pumps in his legs, the furnace rattling like before. Helm Splitter. The attack was about to slam onto Zancro's skull, but the blonde quickly raised his arms and blocked the attack, but the force was enough to still send him back towards Earth. Zancro met the Earth with a deafening boom and slowly rose out of the small crater he made, but Han landed right next to him. Steam Hammer Strike. Han yelled before a steam-powered kick met Zancro's side. Zancro quickly got up and black flames coated his hands. Engine no Shonetsu, Flame God's Inferno. Zancro let loose a powerful fireball from his hands and the attack sped towards Han, but the Rune Knight captain jumped out of the way causing a tree to explode. The tree flew through the air, only for Naruto to perform a great feat of superhuman strength and kick the piece of wood at Azuma. Naruto allowed his ability to fly to keep him in the air before diving down after the tree trunk he kicked, heading towards its target, which was Azuma. Azuma saw the attack coming for him and quickly caused the tree to explode before 3 tree roots sped after Naruto. Naruto raised his arms out of instinct to block the attack, but it was a mistake as the roots seemed to explode in a straight line and Naruto's eyes widened as the attack met him. Naruto had called upon the seal and the red energy barrier enveloped him before the explosion could take on its full strength. The smoke cleared and the seal vanished before Naruto flew down towards Azuma, the sound barrier breaking on his way down. Azuma quickly got into a horse stance and raised his arm to parry Naruto's punch and slammed his own fist into Naruto's face. Naruto clutched his now broken nose only for a kick to meet his stomach. He called upon the seal to aid him, but Azuma's fist plowed straight through it, causing Naruto's eyes to widen as he was struck in the stomach. Just as I thought. Physical attacks, except for Tusans, are not affected by the seal. I don't know what that barrier was supposed to do, but it doesn't work, Azuma told the Ogono Fujin. Naruto spat the small amount of blood that had accumulated in his mouth and looked back at Azuma only to see Azuma make a sweeping motion with his hand. Acnologia's son's eyes widened at that and he quickly spun, a violent wind circulation system surrounding him and shielding him from the explosion that resulted when 2 roots impacted with Fudon, Tatsumaki. The tornado then forced its way through the explosion's smoke cloud and the great tree arc user was sent soaring as the attack swallowed him up and sent him skyward. Azuma was then surrounded by white as Kokuo's tails wrapped around his airborne form and pulled back to earth. The man released a grunt of pain as he met the ground before Kokuo's tails converted themselves into steam. Azuma released a loud cry of pain as the steam burned through his clothes and began to burn his skin. A giant root formed beneath Kakuo upon the pained man's request and slammed into the dolphin horse's stomach. The root then wrapped itself around Kakuo and exploded. The 5-tailed beast was sent flying through the air before 2 more roots rose up from the earth and impacted with Kakuo. The transformed Exceed howled in pain as he met the ground. The roots continued to lash at Kokuo's downed form as his tails let go of Azuma. The Grimoire Heart member grinned widely as he watched the pained expression on his opponent's face only for Han to remove said grin. Insert music. Naruto Shippuden reverse situation. Steam Dragon Crusher. Steam expelled from Han's arm and the fast-paced punch suddenly coated itself in steam, taking the form of a dragon's head. The attack met Azuma's face, burning it upon contact. Azuma flew through the air and then steam flew from the Han's furnace. Steam Rush. Han's speed suddenly increased as the pressurized gas was forced through the vents in his leg armor. Han then appeared alongside his flying opponent and sent him into a tree as he grabbed him and threw him away. The armored Rune Knight then jumped after the member of Grimoire Heart, but Azuma avoided the attack and sent a kick to Han's shin, but ended up injuring himself as the armor was quite hard. A root followed the kick and threw Han away. The Rune Knight fell to earth just in time for Zankro to launch his next attack at Naruto. Engine no Shinetsu Jigoku, Flame Gods Burning Hell. Zankro unleashed a stronger version of Engine no Shinetsu and the attack barreled towards the blonde. Naruto quickly saw the approaching Han and grabbed him out of the air and threw him at the attack. The Rune Knight captain screamed in pain as the black flames struck him. Naruto then surrounded his arms with wind. Futon. Arashi no Hanseki. Naruto's arms slammed into Han's stomach sending him through the fire attack and striking Zankro. Kurama arrived as he sent a stream of fire at the 2 downed enemies. The Onibi Myobu struck out with his flaming tails. But Han and Zankro avoided the flaming attack, marveling at the large explosion of flames that formed from the attack. However, they didn't have much time to avoid the attack from Naruto as he appeared above Han. Energy Make. Udama Rasengan. He slammed the attack down on Han, but Han sent steam into his leg armor and he sped out of the way of the powerful magical attack. A large explosion of magic energy formed as the attack met the ground. Zankro was sent skidding backwards from the blast wave of the attack before Kakuo rammed into him. Zankro rolled with the attack and clapped his hands together, a magic seal forming in front of him as he prepared his counterattack. Kokup set 2 tails beneath the ground and wrapped them around Zankro's ankles as they resurfaced. Zankro was caught by surprise as he was sent skyward. The Fire Godslayer spread his arms wands together. Engine no Gomiakuroha, Fire God's Incinerator Wave. A giant wave of fire descended towards the battlefield. The combatants watched the powerful move towards them, but Kurama jumped up and inhaled the fires as if they were nothing. Zankro's eyes widened. "How did you eat the flames of a god?" he exclaimed. Kurama grinned. "There is no fire that I cannot consume," Kurama replied. "Puny god." Kurama sent forth a ferocious fire blast at Zankro, but the Grimoire Heart member dove through the attack and aimed fire-coated punches at the Kitsune as they fell to earth. The 2 fire users attacked and avoided one another before Kurama had 4 tails grab Zankro's limbs and positioned him below him. The Godslayer met the ground first before he was thrown at Naruto. Naruto caught the blonde around his throat and slammed him into Azuma's chest as the man tried to use a close-range bleve at him. The two kin of purgatory were then sent back as Naruto sent a wave of wind after them. Kakuo then released a cry and charged forth, size increasing with the speed of his charge. Naruto quickly flew over the five-tailed beast, which was now the size of a grizzly bear. Kurama snarled and increased his size to equal his brothers. The dolphin horse and Kitsune clashed, holding each other in a stalemate before Kurama caught a blaze. Kakuo turned into steam however and avoided being burnt before appearing above his brother. Kakuo slammed down on the six-tailed fox and smirked at the yelp of pain that escaped from his brother's vocal cords. Kakuo was shoved off by the Kitsune's tails and the white-furred quadruped was sent into a blazing inferno as he was sent into Zankro's attack. Kakuo cried out in pain before slapping Zankro aside as if he were an insect. The blonde Godslayer was then about to meet Han's fist, but the kin of purgatory was quickly saved as Azuma sent 4 roots to explode around Han. The explosion was damaging, but Han's armor proved to be quite the competitor as it survived the blast, but not without a few ash marks here and there. Han then dug his arms beneath the ground and using amazing strength, pulled out a large piece of the earth. He chucked it at the Ogo no Fujin, but Naruto sliced the attack in half before speeding towards Han. He then saw 2 tree roots and a blast of black fire nearing him and called upon the seal. The red barrier formed around him, but Han took the opportunity, having seen when Azuma broke through the crimson barrier with a punch. Steam Dragon Driver. The powerful punch nailed Naruto in the stomach and Naruto spat up blood and bile and was sent flying through the air by the attack. Kurama quickly sped towards his partner and caught him. The two then saw 3 tree roots near them and exploded in front of them upon making contact with the earth. Naruto had erected his seal barrier and defended against the blow and Kurama saw Zankro burst through the smoke before raising his hands above his head. A large ball of ebony fire came to life before it was thrown at the duo.
Engine no Ryusei, Flame God's shooting star. The Godslayer declared. The attack took on the form of what gave it its name and Kurama ate the fires before sending them back at Zankro who was sent skidding back by the blow. Han then followed after, riding atop Kokuo's head. Both steam users launched streams of steam at their opponents.
Unison Raid. Burning Wind. Suddenly the steam began to heat the very air around it and thus burning winds were sent towards the two. Naruto bent the winds to his command and sent them back at their users, splitting apart the Unison Raid attack. The attack struck both steam users and sent them skidding back. However, Azuma rose up over them, riding a tree root and had leaves swirling around him. The leaves flew forth and appeared to be sharper than regular leaves. Naruto sent a twister to intercept them and shredded them. Kurama then took a deep breath and sent a powerful blast of flame at Azuma. The flames took on the shape of a fox head, fangs bared. Kitsune no Koenga. The blazing attack struck Azuma's root and sent the grimoire heart member flying through the air and Kurama picked up the blonde beside him and threw him after him. Naruto curled into a ball as he neared Azuma and then as he reached Azuma, he had uncurled himself and his leg was ready to strike. Wind swirled around his leg as he brought it down and a crescent-shaped wind blast was fired upon making contact with Azuma. Futon. Kazajiri. The attack sent Azuma downwards, but Azuma quickly thrust a hand up. Great Tree Arc. Bleve. The power of the earth shot forth from the magic seal in front of Azuma and slammed into Naruto's body. The blonde flipped through the air and was caught by Kurama before the two looked around and saw their opponents still ready to fight. The two were panting, but smiled. We've never been pushed like this before, Kurama chuckled. I know. They're really strong, Naruto said as he wiped the sweat from his brow. Meanwhile Fu and Chome were closing in on the forested area where the battle was currently taking place only for Chome to freeze. Choemi, what's wrong? The green-haired Dragonslayer asked. I feel. Another one like us. It's a link the 9 of us have. Fu knew the blue feline was making reference to her siblings. Which one is this one? Are you sure you're not feeling Kurama's magic energy? She asked. Chome shook her head. No, it's different. It's Kakuo, the Exceed spoke. Who's that? Fu asked. Chome didn't respond and instead continued to fly towards the area and was shocked when she was suddenly forced back by the force of a powerful clash of magic energies. Amazing, such strength, she whispered. The daughter of Cyclonus also couldn't believe the strength of the magic power she was feeling. She sniffed the air and her eyes widened when she caught a whiff of Naruto's magical energy amongst the accumulation of magic in the forest. Minato's magic is there, she said, still referring to Naruto by the fake name he used. Quick, Chome. I need to see if what I'm thinking is true. You mean if Minato-san is a Dragonslayer like you? The mint-haired girl nodded and Chome didn't any other directions before continuing towards the battleground. Insert music. Fairy tale Shishi no Hoshi. He then leapt off of Kurama's head and vanished into the wind as he moved at high speeds. Zankro, Azuma, Han and Kakuo were all surprised by the show-off speed, and suddenly they felt themselves being pummeled from all sides and lacerations covered their bodies, though Han's armor and Kakuo's regeneration kept them safe. Azuma clutched his chest when a wound extended from his left shoulder to his right hip formed. He was then kicked in the stomach before Zankro was sent to the ground by a suddenly force that struck his skull. The insane Godslayer was sent further into the ground as the wind was forced down onto his body, and an X-shaped wound formed on his back as the wind cut through his clothes. Han and Kakuo were merely being batted left and right as they were able to take Naruto's attacks, and Naruto reappeared in front of them, 2 wind blades around his arms. He was in a kneeling stance before he stood back up. Futon. Mugon no Ansatsusha. The Dragonslayer muttered. Naruto took in a deep breath and watched his opponents. The 2 members of Grimoire Heart were the only ones he was able to seriously injure, but they were somehow getting back up. Han and Kakuo were fine because of Han's strong armor and Kokuo's healing factor. However, they were unable to expect the next attack as Naruto vanished and appeared above them. The wind above Naruto into a sphere before it coated Naruto's hands. Naruto raised his arms and then thrust them downwards. A mere distortion in the air was all the 4 opponents got before the attack met them. Futon. Hantai no Fujin. A large hand shape imprinted itself in the ground as the attack smashed the earth and Naruto's victims as well. Such power over the wind. Han commented as he exerted a large amount of P himself from falling to the ground. The other 3 were committing the same action. So this is why he is called the Golden Wind God? Azuma commented before smirking. Finally. A worthy opponent. Azuma fell to one knee though before Zankro started to cackle and his body became coated in black fire. Ha 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 ha, time to kill a god. Their magical powers suddenly spiked and Naruto and Kurama's eyes widened at that. They really are powerful opponents if they were able to keep standing from that attack, Kurama said.
Yes, but they lost a great deal of magic power to do so in order to counteract the downward push of Hantai no Fujin. Naruto pointed out as he noticed the 4 opponents being more tired than they were before. However, the earth rumbled and Naruto was suddenly shoved out of the way and Naruto watched as 5 white tails wrapped themselves around Kurama's body.
Kurama! Naruto cried out to his Kitsune partner. The 6-tailed beast howled before biting down on Kokuo's appendage, drawing blood, but Kakuo didn't let go, instead converting his appendages into steam and then began to suffocate the fox. Kurama set himself on fire to try and burn his way out and succeeded, but his nose was badly burnt by the steam. The Kitsune's healing factor worked on the damaged sensory organ, but Kakuo took this to his advantage and rammed Kurama, stabbing his side with his horns. Kurama howled in pain before being slammed into the ground repeatedly. Kurama released a stream of fire and sent Kakuo flying back before racing towards his brother and slamming him into the ground. That is it, brother, Kurama roared. I refuse to handle your foolishness any further. The Kitsune began breathing fire over the dolphin horse's body. Kakuo released a loud cry of pain as Kurama burnt him. Kakuo kicked Kurama off with his hooves and then as Kurama skidded backwards, his tails arched over his head. Kurama's red eyes widened and the other combatants suddenly faced the 2 beasts as they grew in size to about the size of an elephant. Red and blue magic energy was pulled in from the Eternano in the air before condensing into large purple orbs of magic energy. Shit! Naruto and Han cursed as they saw their Exceeds about to perform their most powerful attacks. Naruto quickly coated himself in a dome of wind, Han doing the same, but with his steam. Azuma surrounded himself and Zankro by coiling multiple large tree roots around them both. The magic energy spheres finished charging and Kurama and Kakuo stared at one another before launching their attacks. Bijudama. The 2 attacks were released in the form of energy beams. The 2 magic energies clashed and caused many a tree to go flying through the air with dirt, rocks and many other things. Fu and Chome were sent flying back as they saw the large dome of magic energy envelop a decent-sized area of the gargantuan forest. They're using Bijuudama. Are those 2 insane? What's Bijudama? Fu asked over the roaring winds. Chome quickly avoided the trees and rocks that managed to reach her altitude before answering. Bijudama is an attack known only to us 9. It's an attack that draws in the positive and the negative energies of the Eternano in the atmosphere and compresses them into a single area. The energy is then fired in the form of a powerful beam or it could be launched as the sphere alone. It is nearly impossible to dodge or deflect. Chome explained to the Wind Dragonslayer. Amazing. Fu's orange eyes stared at the Dome of Magic. Magic Council building, Fury Branch. The entirety of the Magic Council's members were watching the scene unfold before them, using Ethereum's viewing capabilities to watch the battle that was currently ensuing on the Technician's Chamber viewing lacrima screen. Do you think Han will come out of this with the Ogo no Fujin, the Onibi Myobu and those members of Grimoire Heart? Org asked. Altair spun her lacrima atop her finger. Fujin-kun looks very strong. Han's armor might be strong, but Fujin-kun seems to be denting it. The spy told her, fellow council members. Seagrain nodded. So it seems. Han is supposedly our strongest soldier, and with Kakuo down, the Onibi and the Fujin will no doubt be able to gain a bit of an upper hand in the battle. The blue-haired councilman said. I'm disappointed that you people have such little faith in our own soldier. Bellino shook her head. Yajima remained silent as he watched his fellow council member, Michello, who was tapping his cane in anxiety. Hey, wait a minute, what's that? Michello pointed out as he saw Kakuo and Kurama launch their Bijudama attacks. The flash of white light nearly blinded the council members, even as they watched it on a screen. I'm blind, Leiji cried. How are you blind? You're wearing sunglasses, Bellino yelled at the younger council member. Huh, oh right. He chuckled nervously. Leiji and the others then looked back at the viewing lacrima, and when the light died down, they saw the screen became snowy. What happened? Orc bellowed. Sir, it appears that the magic has caused a great amount of eternano to cloud the screen. We cannot retain visual or audio. The staff member told the elderly man. Orc stroked his beard before sighing. Very well. Contact the transportation group. Tell them to get ready to pick up Han and Kakuo immediately. Already? Are you sure? Michello asked. Orc remained silent before Yajima spoke. Are you all really sure that you want this young man and the kitsune to be a weapon for the council? Haven't we done enough with weapons when we made Han what he is? The second shortest council member spoke. The other council members remained silent before Org turned back to the staff member. Send out the retrieval team and tell them to get ready to head for Lupinus Town to pick up the head captain. Yes, Org-sama. The amphibian saluted before contacting the retrieval team of Rune Knights. Ultir tapped her finger on her teal lacrima and looked at Seagrain. Han will live, but he will not come back well, Ultir spoke. What makes you so sure, Ultir-san? The blue-haired man asked the purple-haired beauty. Ultir smiled softly at the man. Because Fujin-kun appears to be holding back. The other council members' eyes widened at that. You can't be serious, Ultir-san, Bellino exclaimed. The secret member of Grimoire Heart nodded. It is true, Bellino Dono. Fujin-kun has far more magic power than any of us will ever be able to comprehend. I suggest you use the teleportation runes on Han's armor to bring him back here to headquarters. Call back the retrieval team. Ultir said with a serious look on her face. The council was silent. Ultir was a valued member, and she never once spouted a lie to them, as her decisions allowed the council to be just and equal and not be seen as just power-hungry asses. Her instinct and ability to judge a person's strength at a single glance was legendary among the council, and so, they complied. Very well, we will withdraw the head captain, Org said. Cancel the retrieval squad. Michello told the amphibious technician. Ready the teleportation sequence and focus on Han's magic signature. We're withdrawing, Bellino ordered. Yes, Bellino-sama. The amphibious staff members complied. Insert music. Fairy Tale Dark Guild. Master Hades sat in his throne and looked to see his second-in-command, Ultir Milkovich, appear in the communication lacrima next to the throne. Master Hades. The girl bowed, the elderly man nodded. Speak, my child. Master. It appears that the Ogono Fujin and Onibi Myobo are stronger than we have anticipated. I suggest a strategic retreat and to withdraw Azuma and Zancro. Hades' eye narrowed at the purple-haired girl. What brought you to such a conclusion? He asked. Ultir frowned. I felt his magic, master. At first I thought it was merely the combination of all four us, Fujin, myself, Zancro and Azuma, being in the same area that allowed for the magic to suddenly seem so potent. But the truth appears to be that the Ogon are greater than any other mage we have ever seen. Ultir explained. Hades stroked his beard before nodding. Very well, I will trust your judgment. Prepare the transportation runes and teleport them back to the airship, Hades ordered. Of course, master. Ultir said. Hades watched as the woman vanished into nothing as her image was cut off. The master of Grimoire Heart stroked his beard before tapping his foot in annoyance. This is an unexpected and interesting development. Insert music. Naruto raising the fighting spirit. As the magic dome began to increase in size, Kurama snarled before calling upon the entire power of his 6 tails. Kakuo, you dare combat me in a battle of strength, you are foolish indeed. Kurama roared before the 6th tail granted him its power and his Bijudama overpowered Kokuo's. The dolphin horse's eyes widened before he was sent flying through the air as Kurama's Bijudama finally overtook his own. The attack washed over Kakuo in a wave of white light, and the transformed Exceed was sent smashing through multiple trees and a few boulders, the attack also managing to carve a trench in the earth before it vanished as the attack spread out in the form of a smaller dome of energy. The magic energy died down and the other combatants let down their defenses and watched as Kakuo stopped just at the edge of the large forest. Kurama panted in exertion before turning to face Naruto and the others and roared. Naruto turned to face their opponents and his eyes, still a deep blue, filled themselves with the look of a killer. You wish to continue? Naruto asked. Han, Azuma and Zankro gritted their teeth before answering with a barrage of attacks. Azuma then sent forth numerous amounts of tree roots and sharpened leaves which the two cut down with wind and fire. Zankro jumped into the air and coated his fists in black fire. Engine no Seiken, Flame God's Comet Fist. The Fire God Slayer unleashed the fiery attack upon the Ogo no Fujin, but Naruto ducked beneath the attack and slammed an uppercut to Zankro's diaphragm. Zankro coughed as he felt as if he couldn't breathe. Naruto punched him again as he let Zankro land on the ground. Zankro was sent stepping backwards before two more punches slammed into his stomach before Naruto took a deep breath. Futon. Rikuden, the wind bullet slammed into Zankro and sent him towards Azuma. But the man avoided his fellow kin of purgatory and sent 3 roots at Naruto. Kurama's tail smashed down on the roots before they could touch the blonde, and the Dragonslayer leapt into the air only for Han to meet him halfway. The blonde couldn't believe the man's speed before Han smashed both fists down on his skull. Naruto met the ground with a deafening boom and clutched his skull before seeing Han about to slam down on him. Naruto rolled backwards before jumping up and coated his arms with wind. Futon no Kenjutsu. Shikaze no Mai, Naruto roared as he bombarded Han with numerous strikes of his wind blades, but Han, despite releasing grunts of pain, was still mostly protected by his powerful armor. Naruto then raised his arms over his head. Fujin no Tanto. The wind blade slammed down on Han, but Naruto was suddenly sent to the earth as Zankro was hurled into the air and his blazing heel slammed on his fellow blonde skull. Engine no HojinkakoGeki. A stream of black flame followed after Naruto as the kick impacted with him, but Kurama caught Naruto before he could touch the ground and avoided the attack only to be sent sprawling on the ground as Azuma had 4 roots explode in the kitsune's face. "Time to put you two down and take you in," Han exclaimed before steam was released from all 4 of his limbs. Hydraulic Storm Frenzy. Suddenly the furnace on Han's back seemed to rattle much more than it usually did and the steam output from his armor increased exponentially. Naruto and Kurama immediately became on guard as Han suddenly vanished in a blur of speed, a trail of steam marking his movement. Naruto quickly ducked beneath the punch from the left, but the Rune Knight captain followed up with a knee to the stomach. Naruto gasped as he felt the wind driven from his lungs before he was punched rapidly in the chest, his sternum feeling like it was going to snap. Kurama slapped Han in the face with a tail before sending a raging fireball after him. Han landed against a tree and pushed off, driving through the fireball as if it weren't even there, and socked Kurama in the muzzle before grabbing the kitsune and in an unbelievable feat of strength, hurled the elephant-sized kitsune over his head and slammed him down on the ground. Naruto crashed a kick to the back of Han's head before backflipped off of him and sending a tornado his way. Han blurred out of the way before appearing in front of Naruto. The blonde ducked beneath the punch before going into a handstand and slammed a barrage of kicks to Han's face, but the armored man grabbed Naruto and swung him up into the air. Zankro then jumped in the air and grinned widely. "Eat this fucker." Zankro gathered magic and fire within his hands and raised the fireball over his head and grinned at Naruto. Naruto's eyes widened as Zankro hurled the fireball at him and called upon the seal to shield him. Hiden Metsuenjin Maho. Hako Endan, Secret Flame Godslayer Magic. Corona Flame Bomb. Zankro grinned as the black flame shot towards Naruto and collided with the ceiling barrier. His smile grew wider when he saw Naruto was able to survive as the barrier protected him. Zankro then followed after Naruto and sent flame from the bottom of his feet to catch up to his falling opponent. Engine no Kagetsuchi, Flame Gods Kagetsuchi. A torrent of black flames flew from Zankro's hands and impacted with the seal barrier. Naruto then let down the barrier for a while before dodging one of Zankro's fire blasts and crashed a foot into his stomach. Zankro was then twisted so he fell first. Naruto then kicked off of him and formed a Rasengan in his hands. Energy Make. Rasengan. The Rasengan flew from Naruto's hands like a bullet and sent Zankro to the ground. Naruto landed in front of the downed Grimoire heart member only to suddenly be knocked down by an exploding tree root. The seal had formed instinctively and thus Naruto was protected from the brunt of the damage, but he was still sent flying. Zankro then rose back to his feet. Black flames wrapped themselves around Zankro's form before the fires began to look as if they were receding into Zankro's body. Naruto's eyes widened and he pumped more magic energy into his barrier as the two still fell and Zankro unleashed the pent-up magic power within him and a raging shockwave of ebony fire raced forth from Zankro's body, making him look like he was a star that just exploded. Hiden Metsuenjin Maho. Choshinsei, Secret Godslayer Magic. Supernova. The flames crashed into Naruto's barrier and the blonde was sent to the ground as he continued to hold up the barrier. Sweat lined his face as he did this. He looked back and saw Kurama had knocked back Han and was running towards him. The kitsune quickly reached Naruto and began to absorb the black flames and prevent his partner from being damaged any further. But both he and Kurama suddenly felt the three opponents build up a great deal of magic power. Great Tree Arc. Tower Burst. A giant tower of fire erupted from the earth as Azuma used one of his more powerful moves. Volcanic Ventilation. Han punched the ground and a large crack in the ground formed, steam traveling deep into the earth before the steam turned and erupted out of the ground beneath Naruto and Kurama. The three powerful spells collided with the Ogono Fujin and Onibi Myobu in a mixture of fire, earth and steam. A giant explosion took over the entire battlefield and Naruto and Kurama did what they could to try and survive the attack. Naruto held up his 5-point elemental seal barrier, though he felt his magic power depleting at a rapid rate as a result. Kurama was doing what he could to absorb and or eat the fires from Tut. The steam from Han's attack was getting to him, suffocating him somewhat. The explosion raced across the battlefield and formed a mushroom cloud. The smoke and steam and fire all vanished with that one explosion and the three opponents looked at the cloud and panted. Now that those two are probably unconscious from that, time to finish you two off. Han panted before raising his fists. Azuma and Zankro turned and the two kin of purgatory snarled at the head captain. As if you could defeat the both of us. Ha 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 ha. Zankro managed to release his signature insane cackle before coughing when he felt his throat fill with liquid and he spat out the blood while also nursing his lacerations. Azuma rubbed the slash wounds and fell to his knees. The Ogono Fujin and Onibi Myobu are worthy opponents. They will make excellent additions to Grimoire Heart for Master, Azuma muttered.
Ogono Fujin and Onibi Myobu, now that you have been defeated, it is time I bring you two into custody. Han's last word came out separately as he suddenly felt a great magic power wash over him. A pair of white eyes shone through the thick cloud of smoke and then the smoke parted to reveal a pillar of dark blue and black magic power. Han, Azuma and Zankro stared in shock as they felt the malice coming from the magic. Fu and Chome, who were watching from nearby, watched the pillar extend beyond the clouds as it continued to climb. This is it. This is his true magic, Fu stated. Chome looked confused. What do you mean, Fu? This is his Dragonslayer magic power. Whoever Minato is fighting, they're not coming out unscathed. I can barely feel my magic at all, he thought as he looked around the dust cloud and then at himself. His shirt was torn in many places, but his mask miraculously remained intact though there was a large area that was split at the cheek. His pants were covered with burns and had several holes in them, but his boots seemed to be fine. Naruto held the necklace in his hand and smiled when he saw the charm was also safe. It wasn't damaged, however. Naruto turned to see the damaged Kitsune. Kurama groaned as he glowed red and reverted back into his Exceed form. Kurama, Naruto spoke. The feline coughed lightly as if to show he was still kicking, and he remained slightly conscious. Nah. Ru. Too. The Crimson Exceed wheezed. Don't talk. You've used up a lot of magic power. You need to rest. Naruto. Those guys out there are trying to take us and use us as weapons. Kakuo told me before he was hit with my Bijudama. What? It's an ability we all share. There are 9 of his siblings, Naruto, and when in close proximity, we are able to communicate telepathically. The red-eyed feline explained. But why would Kakuo? Hee, Naruto. You should know that family does whatever they can to protect one another. Kakuo and I are brothers, and no matter what, brothers look out for each other. The Exceed chuckled as he saw the look of surprise on Naruto's face. Family? Look out for one another? The blonde asked. Naruto. I've got no magic left right now. Take them down. Use Agnologia's magic. It's the only thing that will be able to bring you back to full strength and you will be able to defeat them. But they are not. Naruto paused. They were strong opponents. They brought him and Kurama on the brink of defeat, a feeling Naruto had never experienced before. The Dragonslayer of Agnologia watched as the smoke cloud was beginning to thin. Naruto grunted in pain as his muscles tried to stop Naruto from moving by filling his body with pain. The Dragonslayer stood to his feet and took a deep breath. He drew upon the hidden magic reserves where his Dragonslayer magic was stored. Naruto then turned and his magic aura flickered. The gray, green and blue aura that represented his regular magic suddenly morphed, taking on a darker personality. Gray, green and blue became a dark blue mixed in with black. The magic power then began to climb as Naruto's rage grew. You attack me. You attack Kurama. Naruto began to growl as he felt his draconian side take over. I will show you no mercy, Naruto roared as his eyes snapped open, his blue irises vanishing as his eyes became a startling white. Kurama managed to turn his head and looked to see the damaged Naruto standing in front of him. The magic power surrounding his partner was greater than it ever was before. Naruto roared and the magic power skyrocketed, literally, and the smoke cloud they were in parted. Kurama smirked as he felt the negative emotions from his partner. Rage, hate, anger, wrath, killing intent. Kurama chuckled lightly. The people before them were screwed now. They say it is unwise to wake the sleeping dragon. Kurama thought.
He managed to see Naruto roar one last time before falling unconscious. Now they will know why. The pillar of magic power died down and the head captain of the Rune Knights and the 2 members of the 7 kin of Purgatory watched as Naruto stood, hunched over. His hair covering his eyes, but the white glow was still visible. What is he? How is he still alive? Han exclaimed as Naruto took a step forward towards his opponents. Such a powerful opponent. Azuma spoke. Zankro seemed to sweat a bit before cackling. You think a little power boost is gonna beat the mighty Zankro? Ha ha ha. In your dreams, fucker. Zankro took a deep breath. Insert music. Fairy Tale Toki Hinata. Engine no Dogo. A blast of black flames raced towards the blonde, but as the attack neared him, Naruto froze in his movements before his head snapped up. Naruto roared and the magic energy within the attack was sucked out of the attack. Zankro, Azuma and Han watched in amazement and in slight fear as the magic energy was devoured by the blonde. Just what the fuck is he? He stopped my attack. He didn't just stop it, Zankro, Azuma said. He sucked out the magical power from the attack and made it his own. He is no ordinary mage. No fucking shit, Sherlock. The blonde Grimoire Heart member shouted. The 3 turned, glowing white eyes fixated only on them. Teeth bared beneath his torn mask and his fingers flexed, claws ready to tear through flesh. His necklace fluttered in the wind generated by his magical power. Han, Azuma and Zankro took a few steps back on instinct as they felt Naruto's magic spike once more. Naruto then took a few intentionally slow steps before he vanished in a blur of speed. Han was the first to be struck as he felt a fist tear through his armor and slam into his sternum. Han gasped as he felt the bone creak before he sent upwards by an uppercut. Naruto jumped after him and the barrage of uppercuts continued to meet him as Naruto flew after the armored individual. Black and blue magic extended from his tailbone and Naruto snarled. Mokashiryu no Shippo. Naruto muttered. Han was sent to the ground as the tail lashed out and struck him on the head, sending him to the ground and also leaving a large crack in his kasa. Naruto then flew down after the man and held his arms stretched out beside him. Mokashiryu no Habataki. Naruto's arms then became coated in the magic of his adoptive father and took on the shape of wings. The wings made a flapping motion and a storm of Dragonslayer magic-infused wind slammed into Han as he met the ground, embedding him further into the ground. Naruto continued to fall after the attack was completed and then he drew back his right fist. Black and blue magic took on the form of a dragon's head and the dragon head opened its jaws and roared. Mokashiryu no Kuro Kiba. The attack pierced through Han's armor as if it were tissue paper and a large explosion of magic energy resulted from the attack. After the explosion died down, it was revealed that Naruto's hand was now covered in crimson as the attack allowed him to pierce straight into Han's stomach. The head captain was now coughing up blood, staining the mask he wore with red. Naruto snarled as he flicked his hand and caused some of the blood to fly through Lud. Disgusting. He thought as his draconian side ruled his mindset. He then bent down to Han's face and forced the man's eyes open and grinned. I will kill you, human. But this is just as a precaution in case you survive. Naruto tilted his head so only his left eye was seen. The power of the Mokashiryu no Byakugan was very diverse. It could break through illusions, dense fogs. Mists even allow one to see through the body and look at their musculature, magic coils and skeleton. However, when used individually, the right eye was able to project the memories of the user, memory projection. The left eye on the other hand was able to perform memory wipe. A black and blue magic seal appeared in Naruto's left eye before a flash of white light filled Han's eyes. The light tore into Han's memory and wiped out everything relating to Naruto's ability to use Dragonslayer magic, but Naruto made sure to leave behind one little detail. His eyes. His eyes always brought fear into those he met, especially when they were like how they were currently. The son of Agnology had then stood back up. Great Tree Arc, Tree Fist. A multitude of roots rose from the earth and began to take the form of fists. All of them raced towards Naruto, but the blonde merely called upon his Mokashiryu no Shippo and crushed each and every fist that tried to attack him. Naruto then roared, a shockwave flying towards the 2 Grimoire Heart members. Azuma stood his ground while Zankro, being lighter, was sent skidding backwards a few feet. Azuma sent forth 4 roots, each one taking hold of one of Naruto's limbs. Great Tree Arc. Linear explosion. A chain of explosion raced towards Naruto, but the blonde Dragonslayer roared and tore through the bindings and freed himself from the explosive move before landing on the ground. However, just as Naruto touched the ground, he took off in a burst of speed and slammed his skull into Azuma's stomach. The Grimoire Heart member gasped before Naruto rose up and stared Azuma in the eyes, burning the image of those horrid white eyes into his brain. Azuma was then slashed along his chest, his shredded shirt now even more so. The attacks allowed the liquid of life to flow freely from his body and Azuma suddenly found himself unable to breathe as he was punched in the stomach. He bent over, only for his face to meet Naruto's knee. The Dragonslayer of the Apocalypse then kicked Azuma in the side, sending him to the ground. However, as he did that, Zankro clapped his hands together. Enjin no Gomiyakuroha. The wave of black flame raced towards Naruto, who simply coated his arms in blackish blue magic energy and swept the attack aside, causing a small explosion to form. Naruto looked down to Azuma, who was climbing back to his feet, before looking at Zankro, who now had a fireball in hand. Enjin no Ryusei. The black shooting star soared towards Naruto. "Do you ever learn, human?" Naruto spoke. Zankro's eyes widened as he suddenly felt a chill run up and down his spine at the way Naruto spoke. It was cold, unforgiving, the tone that promised no mercy even if you begged for it. Naruto ate the magic within the fireball and then sped towards Zankro, causing a small crater to form from the force with which he kicked off the ground. Zankro's face was suddenly feeling as if it were caving inwards as Naruto punched it. Naruto then punched Zankro twice in the stomach before slamming an uppercut against the younger blonde's lower jaw. The two jaws met with a loud clack before Naruto flew after the soaring Godslayer. However, the Godslayer sent a fire blast at Naruto. When that happened, a large explosion erupted from beneath Naruto and enveloped him as Azuma used Bleve on him. The Dragonslayer growled within the fires, and then he absorbed the magic within the attacks into his being, and he smirked. Naruto then released a burst of magic power and dove towards Azuma. The older man sent a barrage of tree roots, explosions and sharp leaves at the blonde, but Naruto vanished in a blur of speed. Azuma looked everywhere for the blonde, only for him to suddenly appear above him. Naruto's arms became coated in black-blue magic power. Mokashiryu no Hakai Sume. Naruto slammed his claws down on Azuma's skull. The blinding pain was enough to send Azuma into unconsciousness before falling to the ground with a large amount of blood pooling beneath his head as his skull was damaged, though his natural endurance as well as the effects of the Great Tree Arc magic allowed him to survive the attack. Of course, Naruto thought the man was dying and would soon die, as his enhanced hearing allowed him to hear the slowing of the man's heartbeat. Enjin no Dogo. A blast of black flame crashed into Naruto, but Naruto ate the magic within the attack. Enjin no Shonetsu, Shonetsu Ryusei. Hanabi. Hojinka Kogeki, Bansan, Zankro used all of his attacks, sending blast upon blast of ebony fire at the Apocalypse Dragonslayer, but Naruto either ate the magic energy and rendered it useless or simply avoided the attack. He then stopped when he reached Zankro's position and punched Zankro in the chest. Zankro was about to scream when Naruto used a palm strike to the throat, silencing his cry of pain before grabbing Zankro's left arm and twisting it at an unnatural angle, and continued with that movement before his arm released a loud snap. Zankro howled like a coyote as the pain raced through his body. "You're too loud, human," Naruto said with an uncaring tone. He threw Zankro at the downed Azuma. He then walked up to his downed opponents and grinned widely, the glowing white eyes doing nothing to reduce the fearful image of the Apocalypse Dragonslayer. Naruto stared at them and wiped their memories, doing it to the same extent as he did to Han. The Apocalypse Dragonslayer then jumped back to gain a bit of distance. Naruto made sure to line up Han along with the other two before the magic energy swirled into his lungs, changing his physiology into that of a dragon's. Magic power filled the air before it began to be absorbed into Naruto's lungs. Mokashiryu no. Naruto unleashed his attack. Hoko. The blast of black and blue magic energy rocketed through the air, however unseen by him. Magic seals had appeared beneath both Grimoire Heart members, and two more formed beneath Han and the downed Kakuo. The four vanished in flashes of light, and Naruto's attack continued on through the forest before causing a dome of energy about half the size of Lupinus Town to form after the attack clashed near the edge of the forest. When the blast died down, it revealed the entire area was now scarred with a large trench, and there was a large clearing where the attack had expanded into the dome and literally destroyed everything it touched. Naruto sighed and he let his magic calm down. His eyes reverted from shining white to cerulean blue. He walked back over to the downed Kurama and raised him up. Naruto then turned and took a few steps before his body felt light and his head was spinning. The world itself seemed to be turning upside down as earth met sky, and then Naruto collapsed into unconsciousness. Fu and Chome, who were watching the entire display of power by the Apocalypse Dragonslayer, were in amazement as they saw him perform Mokashiryu no Hoko. "That looks like a dragon's roar attack," Fu exclaimed as she began to feel giddy. "Finally, someone like me." When the attack finally died down, she had Chome fly down and paused when she saw him take a few steps, kurama in his hands. However, as he took those few steps, she saw Naruto's eyes roll into the back of his head, and he held Kurama closer to him before falling to the ground, unconscious. Fu and Chome flew over to the downed Exceed and Apocalypse Dragonslayer. "Come on Chome, we have to move. The Magic Council is sure to catch wind of what happened here and come to investigate. We better move them. But first, you better scatter their scent or remove it." Fu nodded at Chome's suggestion before inhaling the wind. Furyu no Kuuki Haikuryu, Wind Dragon then let loose small blasts of wind that completely eradicated all traces of their sense. It was a move Fu learned from her dragon parent that allowed her to inhale the wind and then remove whatever scent was present in the air by replacing the air with unaffected air made in her lungs as the wind she made displaced the scents upon her exhalation. With that done, Fu picked up Naruto, who was quite heavy, so she had to put in a bit more effort into carrying her fellow Dragonslayer. She quickly channeled wind magic and a magic seal appeared on her back and 2 pairs wings made purely out of wind formed. Furyu no Haihisho, Wind Dragon Swift Flight. Chome also sprouted her insect-like wings and the two took off through the air away from Lupinous Town, knowing full well that they couldn't just go back into town with 2 injured persons. God, Minato sure is heavy. So is Kurama Nisan. What have these two been eating? Fu laughed at her Exceed partner before realizing something. You know, I've just now realized something. What's that? Chome asked. Fu's sweat dropped as the thought filled her mind. These guys just left town and already they're almost dead. Chome opened her mouth to say something, but no words escaped her vocal cords. I have no idea what to say to that, so where do you think we should go? Well, from what I remember, Frisia town is the nearest town to Lupinous, so we'll go there. We'll make a camp outside the town and get supplies for these 2 dunderheads right here, and then when they're better, we'll leave. Fu nodded. Sounds like a plan, and so the pairs of Exceed and Dragonslayers set off for Frisia town. Magic Council Building, Fury Branch, Exalted Council. A human member of the council's staff entered the area where the councilmen and women made their lounging quarters. Speak, Org said. The staff member rose from her bow and nodded. We have just received Han's and Kokuo's bodies from the battleground. The woman paused. And, Belino raised an eyebrow. Do you want to hear the good news or the bad news? The staff member gulped as she saw the many hardened gazes focused on her. Altair spoke. What's the good news? She asked. The staff member nodded before taking out the clipboard she hid behind her back. Well, Altair-sama. The good news is that Han and Kakuo will make full recoveries, Kakuo more quickly than Han. Excellent, that is good news, but what's the bad news? Yujima asked. The bad news is that Han will take at least 4 full months to recover from his wounds. He suffers from massive amounts of bone breakage, minor burns, magic depletion, he has lost a massive amount of blood and there appears to be a gaping hole in his chest from what appears to have been made by a human fist. The council's eyes widened at that. Are you serious? There is no living thing in all of Earthland that can pierce through Han's armor, Mekilo shouted. Though I am surprised by what I'm about to say. I agree. We used the strongest metals and the best engineers in all of Earthland to construct that armor. We have sent Han against powerful monsters and demons that not even some of Fairy Tail's S-class mages could handle alone, and Han took them down with ease, Yujima said. Then it appears that the Oganu Fujin and Onibi Myobu are stronger than they appear. But to be able to pierce Han-san's armor. That is quite a feat. Seagrain added. They turned to the staff member who was now fidgeting upon her being noticed. Yes? She asked when noticed their gazes. 4 months? The staff member nodded. Yes, Org-sama. I see. We'll go to the area where we make our wanted posters. Change the one for the Ogono Fujin and the Onibi Myobo. What would like it to say, Org-sama? Increase the bounty on his head or add a few more details or... Org raised his hand and a fierce gaze settled on her when she was silenced. We cannot risk another situation like this. Do not engage them, physically, verbally, mentally. Whatever way possible. Do not attempt confrontation. These 2 monsters are not to be trifled with as they have managed to take down Han as well as Kakuo. They are to be labeled SS class criminals, Org said. SS class? Isn't that a bit high, Org-sama? The staff member exclaimed. Org shook his head as he looked to his fellow council members, all nodding in agreement with his decision. They are to be labeled as flee on sight. The staff member gulped at that. There were rarely any times when a criminal, despite their power, would be labeled flee on sight. There were not many in that category because of it. Oh, of course, Org-sama. The staff member bowed before exiting the chambers. The council room was silent for a few moments before Altair stood up. Where are you going, Altair? Belino asked her fellow female. I need to visit Han and Kakuo in the medical ward. Then, I'm going for a walk. A long walk. I will return soon. The others nodded before allowing the dark purple-haired girl to leave. As Altair left the council room, she wandered down the large hallways of the building before looking around to make sure no one was around. She extended her sensory abilities for a minute as a precaution, and after she was sure there was no one around, she performed requib magic and requipped into her grimoire heart outfit. Teleportation magic. Grimoire heart, she said. A dark purple magic seal appeared beneath her and she vanished in a small flicker of light. Unknown location, skies of fury. Hades sat in his throne. Suddenly the sound of feet against the metal of the airship met his ears. He sat up and saw one of the grunts enter the throne room and he bowed. The grunt remained on the ground in a kneeling position. Master Hades, Zancro and Azuma have returned. What are their statuses? He asked. The grunt shuddered slightly as he remembered what he saw. Sir, we have taken their bodies to the medical ward. They are alive, but they are critical condition. Critical condition? Hades said with his single, visible eye widening. The grunt nodded. Yes, master. They both suffer from numerous lacerations all over their bodies, magic depletion, large amounts of fractured and/or broken bones and first-degree burns from what appears to be made by both fire and steam. Zancro appears to have nearly had his trachea crushed along with 5 of his ribs. His left arm is also broken. Azuma has 6 of his ribs broken along, but while not suffering an equal amount of damage to his body. His wound is far worse as he has suffered massive damage to the upper left hemisphere of his brain. He will take much longer to heal, but we can expect a full recovery before you launch your plans. I see. Anything else? Hades asked. The grunt nodded. Yes, master. You see, well, I think it would be best to show you. Hades nodded before rising from his throne and he followed the grunt to the medical ward of the airship. As the grunt and the master reached the glass revealing the heavily bandaged kin of purgatory, Hades' eyes widened when he noticed just how damaged they were. Even with so many bandages and the large amount of morphine being pumped into their bodies as humanly possible, it appeared they were still in pain, blood staining their bandages red. However, Zancro was much more vocal in his outburst as Azuma was not one to talk in his sleep. Those eyes. Those horrid white eyes. Zancro howled as the medical mages crowded around him, trying to sedate the blonde godslayer. Hades could only gasp as he saw what he thought was the most fearless member of his army suddenly suffer a mental breakdown. Mental recovery? He asked the grunt. Sir, 5 months for physical, but it may take a few more weeks after that to calm down Zancro. Azuma appears to not suffer from any mental trauma at all, and given his personality I would believe that he would see his opponents as a reason to become stronger. Hades nodded. It was very much like Azuma to continue training to become stronger, however. Hades continued to watch a sedated Zancro. What happened out there? The master of Grimoire Heart wondered. Grimoire Heart airship, balcony. A young girl around the age of 12 stood on the balcony watching the clouds. The girl had short pink hair and vibrant green eyes. A stark contrast to her current mood of indifference. She wore a skin-tight purple leotard of some sort. The sides of her leotard were a darker purple and were sectioned off from the lighter purple by white lines. Over the leotard, the girl wore a red cape which was laced with gold. The left shoulder portion of the cape had the symbol for Grimoire Heart imprinted in white. The outfit was completed with brown-colored boots that reached her thighs and had white strips on it. This was Meredy, another member of the 7 kin of Purgatory. Meredy. The pink-haired girl's mood suddenly did a complete 180 as she became all sunshine and smiles. Turning to face the woman who saved her life, Meredy grinned widely. Ult-chan, however, she was suddenly frozen as killing intent and magic power was expelled from Ultir. How many times have I told you? Do not ever call me that. The older woman snarled, her eyes full of contempt upon hearing the nickname. Meredy frowned, but nodded. Sorry, Ultir-san. She apologized. After the awkward silence that resulted from Ultir's suddenly dark personality, Meredy spoke. Did you hear about what happened to Azuma and Zancro? Ultir nodded. To be put in such a condition, Fujin-kun must be exceptionally strong. Fujin-kun? Meredy questioned. Ultir chuckled as she remembered her meeting with the powerful mage. Yes, Meredy. Fujin-kun is an exceptionally strong mage, so very strong. Does that mean Ultir-san is going to try and court the Ogo no Fujin? Ultir's eyes widened at that declaration, a small blush appearing on her face. What? Of course not, she said, waving her arms frantically in a comical manner. Contrary to her words, an image of when she had flirted with Naruto out her need to tease the man appeared in her mind's eye. Damn you mind. The woman cursed. Meredy giggled at the woman she saw as an older sister. The only man I will ever love. Ultir blushed even more as she thought of the Black Wizard, is Zeref-sama. Meredy nodded. It was obvious as to just how much Ultir was obsessed with the 400-year-old great-great-grandson of Merlin. Ultir-san, what do we do now that the Ogo no Fujin and the Onibi Myobu have avoided capture? Well, Master Hades will tell us what to do afterwards. He is rather shaken by just how heavily damaged 2 members of the 7 kin of Purgatory were, but I would assume he will either try again or he will abandon the quest to add those 2 to our ranks. Fujin-kun made it very obvious that he does not want to join, and if he damaged Zancro and Azuma that much, then I would go with the latter choice. I see. Meredy spoke softly. But Meredy looked up at her elder's face upon her continuation to speak. There is something Fujin-kun is hiding. His magic power is exceptionally great, much too great to be limited to only wind magic. The magic was dark and fierce, but also very addicting to one's sense of magic detection. There was an eerie silence as the wind blew through both girls' hair, the clouds moving past them. Will you be punishing Zankro and Azuma for their failure? After all, you are the leader of the Seven Kin. Merity asked. Altair shook her head. I believe that no punishment I could give could replace the trauma that Fujin-kun has given those two. Zankro's practically having a mental meltdown and Azuma will no doubt be in a coma for a while. No. They've been punished enough by having to fight those two. Also, they have been labeled as SS class ranked criminals by the Magic Council. 8. Flea on sight, duo. Really, there has rarely ever been a person who is labeled as flea of sight, she exclaimed. Merity looked down at the ground in disbelief. Just how strong are these two? Come on. Altair ordered as she turned around and headed into the airship. Merity jogged after her before walking in time with the older woman. Where are we going, Altair-san? We're going to go on a little hunt by ourselves. The two continued to walk in silence before Altair stopped and looked around. She then clapped her hands together and a dark purple magic seal appeared beneath the two females. Aren't you going to tell Master Hades we're leaving? Altair grinned. Now why would I do that? She asked. Merity blinked, unable to come up with an answer before they vanished in a small pillar of black light. A few hours later, Lupinus Town, Karyu no Tekken. The large castle of Lupin suddenly released a large boom and the monster said to be living in the castle was shown to be soaring out of it, a tongue of fire following after it. A large hole in the shape of the monster was shown in the wall. The citizens of Lupinus watched as the monster flew comically through the air before landing in the middle of the road, unconscious with many a bruise along with a large bump on its head that appeared to be smoking. Looks like that guy from Fairy Tail got the monster, a man said. Yes, but remember what people say. Fairy Tail has a habit for destruction, a woman said. Something's bound to happen. They got the monster. What's the worst that could happen as a result of that? Another man asked. However, unknown to the townsfolk, the monster had broken through several support structures of the castle. A loud rumbling suddenly met their ears and all the citizens of Lupinus Town could only gawk as they saw two figures walk out of the castle normally, but as they did so, the ancient structure came tumbling down. Well, actually, only one half of the castle had come tumbling down. The rest was fine. Oh, that. The man's sweat dropped. The members of Lupinus Town could only gawk as they saw Fairy Tail's very own salamander walk out of the, now half destroyed, castle with a wide grin. Well, that was easy. Request completed. We got rid of the monster in the castle and now we can get paid. The son of Ignil exclaimed. Happy floated next to his partner. I Natsu, but you destroyed half the castle in the process. Happy deadpanned. Natsu turned and gawked as he saw the destroyed ancient structure. What? Aw man. Ji-chan's gonna be pissed when the Magic Council finds out about this. Natsu began to cry anime tears before Happy began to chuckle. Aye sir, unknown location, unknown time period. Naruto's eyes slowly opened only to suddenly close them shut once more as a bright light filled his vision. The light was a bright white and if he hadn't covered his eyes with his hands he would have been sure that his retina and cornea would have been seared to ashes. His pupil quickly dilated and expanded before settling on dilated as it regulated the amount of light that entered his eye. He was in some sort of white space. There was nothing there, like an empty pocket dimension. So this is probably what it feels like to be sealed, Naruto thought as he looked around the void. Suddenly a golden light filled his vision and he had to cover his eyes once more as his eyes were on the verge of being melted into liquid. Naruto squinted as he continued to watch the light before seeing the image of a spiral. The spiral was surrounded by the kanji for the 5 elements of fire, water, earth, wind and lightning and in the center of the spiral was the kanji for soul. Naruto's eyes widened slightly as the light was still shining. That's the 5-point elemental seal, he exclaimed. But what the hell is it doing here? Where's here? Naruto asked himself. The Apocalypse Dragonslayer then saw the seal pulse as it glowed with a crimson color. Na-ru. 2. Naruto's eyes widened as he heard the sound of 2 voices, one male and one female. What the? Na-ru. 2. The voices repeated. Naruto stared at the image of the seal as the crimson glow became a bit brighter and then 2 figures appeared in front of the image. However, the figures were shadowed, the light obscuring their physical forms. Who the hell are you? Naruto growled as he called upon Acnologia's magic. His hands became coated in black and dark blue, taking on the shape of claws. His pupils became slitted as he roared and slashed at the 2 figures. 3 arcs of magic energy sliced through the air towards the 2 figures. However, the attack was suddenly nullified as the seal's image caused the magic energy to somehow fade into particles. To think you grew so strong, Naruto-kun. The female voice spoke. Naruto's eyes widened at that before the 2 figures neared him. Naruto roared and sent a pulse of Dragonslayer magic at the 2 figures only for the seal to react once more and a crimson glow surrounded the 2 figures, nullifying the attack. The golden light in the void along with the crimson light of the seal grew brighter as the figures touched Naruto's face, but their faces were still obscured. Naruto activated Mokashiryu no Baikugan, and suddenly the shadows vanished and the light dimmed as his pure white eyes stared into the faces of Minato Namikaze and Kushina Uzumaki. Minato and Namikaze. Naruto stared at his blonde father before turning to the red-haired woman. KK Kushin Yu Uzumaki? It's been a while. Naru-chan. Kushina smiled at him. 20 years actually. Although acknowledge erasing you was a bit of a shock, we are glad to see you came out so strong. Master of Wind Magic. You're well on your way to becoming just as good as me in Seal Magic, but you've got a long way to go before you're at your Ka-chan's level. Just like your old man, nay? Minato scratched his head in embarrassment as he admitted he wasn't as good as his wife. You also wield Ascalon and Excalibur like a pro. We're so proud of you, Naru-chan. Naruto blinked as he stared at the two people before him. He then looked down at the ground, his bangs covering his eyes. His body trembled before his pupils changed from round to slitted. He bared his canines and grit his teeth, generating a windstorm that did nothing but cause Minato and Kushina's hair to blow back from the force while their smiles didn't leave their faces. You're not real. You're just figments of my unconscious state of mind. I'm merely hallucinating. It's said to be a common occurrence when one is in a. Naruto's eyes widened. Near-death state. The blonde looked down at his hands. Impossible. I can't be in a near-death state. I fought to my limits before in X776 when Acknowledgia and Kurama were training with me in the pocket dimension, but I've never been brought this close to death before. To suddenly experience a near-death state. Naruto's thoughts were racing at a mile per minute. I'm the Dragonslayer of the Black Dragon. I can't have already been brought down already. Naruto's hands suddenly began to tremble, not out of fear, but out of the mere shock at being in the state he was in now. However, he felt Kushina wrap her arms around his body. Naruto stiffened as he was hugged for the first time in 7 years. Ever since he left Clover Town in X777, even during his training with Haku and Zabuza, he had never been given physical contact. Well, comforting physical contact. As he lied frozen stiff, he began to feel a warmth growing inside him. It was a warmth that felt familiar to him as it felt endlessly comforting. It's okay, Naruto-kun. We're here for you. Naruto's white eyes widened and lost their fierce glow as Kushina kept hugging him before Minato ruffled his hair. You've really grown up, Naruto. Minato grinned widely at his son before Kushina was suddenly thrown back. Minato was then met with a fist going through his stomach. The blonde man frowned as he stared at Naruto's hand, covered in the magic of the Black Dragon. Minato stepped out of the fist and his body suddenly regenerated before sighing. You're not real, for God's sake, you're not fucking real, Naruto roared before raising his claws. Mokushiryu no. Naruto's movements were halted as Minato appeared in his face in a yellow flash, the equally tall man holding back his arms using only the minimum amount of effort. Kiroi Senko. Minato stated. Minato continued to grip Naruto's arms and then a sad smile appeared on the man's face. Kushina rose to her feet and her stomach, now sporting a large hole, regenerated in a flash of crimson. The red-haired wizard saint walked up to her husband and sported the same smile as Minato's. We are real, Naruto-kun. Kushina spoke, caressing his face. However, as the woman was about to continue, a small rumble occurred in the void. Naruto's parents frowned. It seems that you are waking up, my little Naru-chan. We're sorry we didn't get to talk with you more, especially seeing as we have finally been able to meet you face to face after so long. You will see us again, Naruto. Until then, try not to get yourself killed. Male voice chuckled. The male and female rested their index fingers on Naruto's forehead before shoving him backwards. What? No. No, you can't leave me, not again. Not after all this time. Tio-yu-san. Ka-chan. Naruto shouted as he tried to reach out to his parents but suddenly found himself falling as the area behind him suddenly sported a spider web of cracks. The sound of glass shattering met Naruto's ears as the light vanished and suddenly he was encased in darkness. Unknown location. Forest outside of Fresia town. Year X784. The blonde Dragonslayer's eyes snapped open as he rose up into a sitting position. He panted heavily as he looked around the area and noticed he was in a slightly forested area underneath a tree. He saw his arms were shaking from the traumatic emotions he felt when he saw his parents again after so many years. Was that a dream? He asked himself as he was confused about what he woke up from. Was he dreaming or was it possible he somehow spoke with his deceased parents? He looked down at himself and noticed his clothes were no longer on his body. Well, he still had his pants and boots, but those were torn and damaged beyond repair. He then noticed his entire upper body, from below his neck to his waist, was wrapped in bandages. He noticed the red stains showing that he had bled. I can't remember the last time someone made me bleed since Zabuza-sensei and Haku-san. Naruto mused. The son of Acknowledgia then noticed his necklace was gone. His blue eyes widened at that before he heard a voice. Oh good, you're awake. Naruto spun around his feet and formed a wind blade around his arms and pointed them directly at his opponent's throat. Fu's eyes widened in fear before grinning and eating the wind blades, converting her lungs into that of her father's. Minato-kun, nice to see you're awake and obviously you're fully healed if you can react like that. You were pretty banged up after that fight with those guys. The blonde remained silent before walking up to Fu, and then suddenly she felt her airflow being restricted. The blonde raised her high into the air and Fu clutched his hand, trying to pry his hand off of her larynx. "Where is it?" he growled, eyes becoming slitted. Fu gulped what little air she could and released a small gust of wind. Naruto snarled at the weak attack as it merely caused his hair to blow back. "Where is it?" his grip growing tighter. "What are you talking about?" she gasped out. "The necklace. The necklace. Where is it?" Fu's face began to turn slightly blue as she began to run low on oxygen. Fu slowly raised her arm and pointed near the tree where Naruto had previously been sleeping. "Oh, over there. And now can you please stop choking me?" The blonde turned and saw his fellow Dragonslayer was pointing at a new set of clothes, neatly folded, and his necklace was laid atop the pile. Naruto threw Fu aside like a rag doll and sent her rolling along the ground as he walked up to the pile of clothes. He bent down on one knee and picked up the necklace and inspected it. He sighed in relief as he saw there was no damage done to the piece of jewelry. He passed it over his head and watched it dangle for a while as it rested against his bandaged chest. "Well," Fu coughed as she regained her breath and lost the blue tinge in her skin, "is that the way you thank people who just saved your life? You ungrateful bastard." Naruto turned back to the Wind Dragonslayer and nodded. "Thank you," the son of Aknologia whispered as he fingered the necklace. Fu's eyes widened when she heard the blonde utter those words. She then noticed the look in his eyes when he stared at the necklace. She saw nothing at first, but there was a glint of appreciation in those cerulean orbs of the Apocalypse Dragonslayer. "Just what does that necklace mean to you, Minato-kun? Did a girlfriend give it you?" the daughter of Cyclonus asked, a slight blush on her face due to asking a personal question. Naruto turned to the green-haired girl and kept a stoic face before replying. "This was given to me when I made my very first nakama. As a dragon, I treasure those that I hold close as well as the things they give me. This necklace was a present during one of the days they celebrated my birth." "Can't you just say birthday?" Fu deadpanned. Naruto remained silent before looking at his bandages and began to strip them off. Fu's eyes widened. "Hey, what the hell are you doing?" the daughter of Cyclonus yelled. Naruto raised an eyebrow in confusion. "I'm getting rid of these useless bandages. I possess a healing factor and thus I heal quickly. I will be changing into these clothes that you have given me," he replied while tearing off the bandages. Fu blushed a bright red as she noticed Naruto's toned muscles. His skin was a slight tan color and his muscles were lean and strong. They were similar to that of the blonde black fire-using mage he was fighting, but much more toned and smooth-looking. He also had defined pectorals and abdominals. An 8-pack. Not bad, Fu thought as she continued to watch him strip. However, as he was about to take off his pants, he paused and looked at her with a blank look.
"What? Privacy, Wind Dragon. I know very well you wouldn't want me to watch you while you changed clothes. Of course I would rather enjoy the sight." The blonde caused a grin to form on his face as Fu was sent into a mess of unintelligible words as she tried to make a comeback, but failed to do so before turning around and allowing Naruto to change without her orange eyes trying to memorize every detail of his physical appearance.
"By the way, Wind Dragon," Naruto spoke as he was taking off his boots and pants. How long have I been unconscious?" Fu thought for a few seconds before answering. 2 days, 5 hours, 55 minutes and 40 seconds, she replied. The blue-eyed Dragonslayer was rather impressed with the accuracy of her answer. He nodded. "I see. Where is Kurama?" He and Chome went to go for a little flying to stretch their wings. They said they haven't seen each other in years, which is rather unbelievable in my mind seeing as they are siblings. Anyway, they said how they wanted to catch up. Naruto nodded before Fu spoke once more. "You really care for Kurama, don't you, Minato-kun?" Fu asked as she looked up at the sky. The blonde didn't reply and an eerie silence filled the air.
"I'm decent," he informed the mid-haired girl. The orange-eyed Dragonslayer turned back around and let out a wolf whistle at seeing his new look. Naruto's new outfit consisted of a long-sleeved black t-shirt, something she thought was something of a trademark, which was why she bought it. The shirt was patterned with a golden spiral on the front and had smaller golden spirals on either shoulder. The pants were a pair of dark green cargo pants which sported many a pocket, and he allowed them to not be tucked into the pair of new black boots he had.
"I have to say, you look pretty damn hot," Fu stated openly. Naruto looked over himself before he tapped his foot and thought. "Something wrong?" the Wind Dragonslayer asked. Naruto didn't reply as he made several hand movements. He performed seal magic, storage pocket, the more advanced version of a storage seal in which one literally tears open an empty pocket in space rather than requiring the use of paper to draw the seal and then pump magic into the paper to open the pocket dimension. He used it to store all of his sealing supplies, his money bag, what little food and water he had left for himself and Kurama as well as. Naruto drew out his black cloak, patterned with dark blue patterns similar to the ones on Agnologia's scales. He put the cloak on and nodded in satisfaction. He is an exceptional companion, but he is not one I would necessarily care for, as I know the furball can take care of himself. Why he is still with me is a question that remains unanswered. Oh, was the only reply the green-haired girl could make. Never in her life would she have thought that Minato would act like this. Why are you telling me this? She asked. You asked me earlier if I cared for Kurama. That is my answer. Naruto answered his fellow Dragonslayer. Fu's orange eyes stared at him for a while before she giggled. My response amuses you, Wine Dragon? He asked. The green-haired girl giggled a bit more. In all honesty, it's not your response, but rather the fact that you of all people actually said it. Naruto raised an eyebrow at that. Elaborate, as I failed to comprehend your explanation. Well, it's just that you're so cold and distant to everybody from what I could tell from our first meeting. However, from the fact that you were raised by a dragon and given by how you act with Kurama, your statement does hold truth to it. The Wind Dragonslayer replied. The blonde stared with a confused expression, the wind blowing through his hair before reversing direction as Fu aided. I see, was all he could reply with. So Minato-kun? Naruto looked down at the girl as she sat down on the grass beneath the tree, welcoming the shade beneath its branches. Why do you call me Wind Dragon? I told you, my name is Fu. It's a manner of respect to those given the title of Dragonslayer. I call them by their titles. I call the son of Igneal, Fire Dragon. The daughter of Grandine, I label her as Sky Dragon. Therefore, being the daughter of the Wind Dragon, Cyclonus, you are thereby Wind Dragon.
So it's a matter of respect. Yes, but that is merely in respect to the dragons themselves, as well as the fact that you all are Dragonslayers like myself. However, Dragonslayers does not imply that I respect you, at least not entirely. I fought the Fire Dragonslayer a while back. He is a rather interesting Dragonslayer, but still weak. His potential is vast, but that does not make up for the fact that he is by far weakest of our species.
Your dragon must have been an amazing teacher. By the way, on to that topic, who was your dragon, Minato-kun? Naruto remained silent as the image of Agnologia filled his mind. I saw you when you were fighting with Kurama. You used pure magic energy and there was no elemental affinity applied to it when you used it. It was just pure, raw magic power. My dragon parent, Maitu-san, is a dragon unlike any other. The strongest dragon and the most prideful one. He taught me everything I knew, well other than my wind magic, because I taught that to myself. Fu remained silent as Naruto continued his tale. Maitu-san was very strict, training me into the ground, making me practice my magic when I learned to activate it until I couldn't feel my muscles when it ended. I was pushed to the brink every time, and as a result, I became what I am. A person who looks down upon the human race and sees it as a weaker species. The blonde nodded at that. You still haven't answered me though, Minato-kun. Who is? Or well, was your dragon? How did you meet your Tusan? What is the element of your dragon? You really wish to know of my draconian parent's name? You wish to know my story? Fu nodded rapidly. Yes, Minato-kun. I do. I really do. The blonde closed his eyes as he sat down on the grass, sitting only a few meters away from Fu. Well, an eye for eye then, Wind Dragon. You tell me your story first before I tell you mine. After all, it is common courtesy to introduce oneself before the respondent should answer. Naruto said. Fu nodded, but then paused as she was about to speak. How can I be sure that you will tell me your story once I tell you mine? She asked. Naruto didn't reply, causing the girl to sigh at her fellow Dragonslayer. You can't, was what he replied with. Fu's facial expression became one of mixed feelings. She was confused at the blonde's answer, she was angry because he was so damn stubborn, and she was also a bit amused because of his honesty. The Wind Dragonslayer shook her head with a small smile on her face before looking at him, her orange eyes staring into his cerulean ones. You're an interesting person, Minato-kun, but I don't think I will tell you my story. Naruto nodded. Very well. I could care less about how you grew up with Cyclonus, actually. It was merely your own decision to attempt to tell me your meaningless escapades with Cyclonus. Fu's eye twitched as she heard the blonde's words. Meaningless? You call the times with my papa meaningless? She roared. The wind kicked up around her only to be cast aside as Naruto bent the wind to will and allowed it to side with himself. Yes, I do. I care only for myself and those I respect. You are not any of those things. True, you have aided me in regaining my health, and for that I am grateful. But mere medicinal knowledge does not earn one my respect. Besides, I would have recovered in time even if you left me alone. You little bastard. Fu growled. You said you may know where Papa Cyclonus is. I'm a Dragonslayer, just like you. Why can't you bear any empathy towards me? I'm sure you miss your dragon. Naruto snorted at that. Please, Wind Dragon. I could care less about that overgrown garden snake. That bastard killed my parents and ended up teaching me the ways of life.
However, though our relationship was built merely upon mutual respect, Kurama seems to believe that Toussaint and I cared for one another. Such unnecessary emotions.
As for why I do not bear any empathy towards you,
It is because unlike you, I know the reasons as to why the dragons left. My Toussaint is not bound by whatever code or law the dragons obeyed to leave us, and so I do not focus myself on finding my parent, but rather on simply getting stronger. I made a promise to kill the one who dared disgrace my Toussaint, and I will. Naruto's eyes flashed white as his rage spiked momentarily. Fu remained silent as Naruto let loose a mild amount of his rage towards the Dragon King. You're a hypocrite, Minato-kun. Fu laughed. Naruto narrowed his eyes at Fu's laughing form before appearing in her face as he moved in a blur of speed. Black and blue magic coated his arms and taking on the image of claws. He held the claws to the green-haired girl's throat and snarled.
care to repeat that, Wind Dragon? Fu laughed a bit more before speaking. You say you don't care for your dragon, and yet here you are, telling me that you will kill the one who dared to disgrace your Toussaint. Sounds to me that you care for your dragon. Naruto's claws twitched as he was about to slice open the girl's throat, but then paused. Care for Agnologia? An unlikely assumption. Respect, yes. Care for him? Please. That overgrown garden snake has done nothing but torment me for over 85 years. Naruto lowered his claws and the Apocalypse Dragonslayer ran his fingers through his hair. You are annoying, Wind Dragon. Just like your cousin. The Sky Dragon? You've met her? Naruto nodded. I didn't just meet her, I taught her. I taught her how to live and how to fight. Fu raised an eyebrow in surprise. Interesting. Never would have thought that you of all people would take on a protege. Fu chuckled. The two Dragonslayers stayed silent for a few moments before the Wind Dragonslayer spoke once more. Why won't you tell me about your dragon? The blonde sighed at the green-haired girl's persistence. You're a persistent one, aren't you? Papa Cyclonus said it was one of my more noticeable traits. She grinned. Naruto stood up and looked down at the sitting girl. You wish to know my tale? Then we'll compromise. What do you have in mind? She asked with a slight blush on her face as her mind drifted to rather obscene images between her and the Apocalypse Dragonslayer. You may tell me your tale of how you met Cyclonus, no matter how uninterested I may be in it, but also. Naruto grinned widely as he spoke his next words. You and Chome will become my subordinates and follow my instructions and mine alone. Fu's eyes widened before her face became red with fury. What? You can't be serious? Naruto stared into Fu's orange eyes and his blue eyes seemed to stare into her very soul. On what count would I not be serious, Wind Dragon? I find it a very fair trade. My background is not common knowledge and is something no one, no human or Dragonslayer, knows of, and with you being able to control the winds to an equal if not greater degree than myself due to your abilities, you would be an asset to me. What the hell? I am not swearing my loyalty to you. My loyalties lie to myself and to Chome, and besides that is a very unfair negotiation. Very well. I will bargain with you. I have numerous amounts of precious metals and stones in my possession. How much will you take? I am not going to sell myself and Chomei to you. Pity. Naruto frowned before shrugging. Very well. At least you have enough pride within yourself to make a decision to not serve under me. Cyclonus taught you well. Naruto turned and walked away. Fu's orange eyes settled on his retreating back before she remembered a comment he had mentioned earlier. She looked at the ground with mixed emotions before she made her decision. Minato-kun. Naruto turned at the mention of his fake name. Fu gulped before speaking. I will pledge my loyalty to you. However, you must leave Chome out of the deal and you must tell me what you know. You will tell me where Papa Cyclonus went. The son of the Black Dragon gave a maniacal grin. Excellent. I already have 4 members within my army. Kurama, Sky Dragon, Agnologia and now Wind Dragon will be added to my ranks. Her Exceed will join me soon enough, but I will take what I can get. The blonde nodded. Very well. Chome will remain out of the bargain and Dragon's whereabouts as well as my background. In exchange you are now my subordinate and I will listen to your story on Cyclonus. Naruto sat down in a cross-legged position. You go first. Fu said with a mild glare, copying her master's actions. If you don't, I will slice you to shreds. The wind picked up and a small cut formed on Naruto's cheek as a way of revealing Fu was not kidding with respect to her threat. Naruto chuckled as he felt the seal on his stomach perform its function and the cut healed in a matter of seconds, taking away all evidence of it even being there. Although you speak with a threat that cannot be carried out, I will humor you and talk first. So with that, Naruto told his story. Of course he spoke with very little detail, merely giving a summary of his life story. He talked about his parents having fallen at the claws of Agnologia, his dragon parent. A piece of information that shocked Fu to her very core, but it did answer many questions concerning the blonde's personality, strength and view on the human race. He followed up with how the dragon taught him and spoke of the meeting of his former nakama in Clover Town. He told her of his meeting with Kurama and how he and the Exceed had begun their partnership.
He then told the Wind Dragonslayer of how Aknologia told him he had to leave during the year X777 on July 7 before he too had left to travel the world, and that he had met Wendy along the way, teaching her how to become a better Dragonslayer and to get over her weakness.
After that, I journeyed through Earthland. I found a teacher to train me in swordplay, and once I perfected my swordsmanship, I began looking for any worthy opponents with which to test my abilities with. So far, very few battles have proven to be rather fruitful in that aspect, and here I am. Wow. So you're the Apocalypse Dragonslayer. I can see now why you would want to keep that very low-key, since people would no doubt fear you or even try to assassinate you. Naruto tapped his chin. Maybe I should reveal my Dragonslayer status more often, because I do aim for that result whenever I meet my opponents. Naruto told his subordinate. Fu's sweat dropped at her fellow Dragonslayer. Baka. She thought before bringing up her final promised piece of information. Now tell me, do you know where Papa Cyclonus is? Naruto nodded. I do, and as stated in the deal, I will tell you where your father went when he left you. Fu leaned in closely to hear what the Apocalypse Dragonslayer had to tell her. As I had told you before in my tale, I am bound by an oath of the dragon, so I cannot tell you the entirety of what you wish to hear. I don't care. It doesn't matter how much information I get, I need to know what happened to my papa. Fu said with a serious tone, but there was a part in her sentence where her voice cracked due to the emotion she was currently feeling. Cyclonus left on July 7, X777 in order to take part in something known only to the dragons. This event takes place in the dragon homeland, and that is where your father disappeared to.
Do you know where it is? This homeland? No, as my Two-chan never revealed that piece of information for some reason. I suspect he'll only tell me it when we meet again to go there, but even if I did know, I cannot tell you, for that was not part of our deal. I merely agreed to tell you where your father went. Now for your end of the bargain. Your story about Cyclonus, I believe. Fu wiped the tears that lined her eyes, and Naruto rolled his eyes.
You humans are so emotional. Your dragon left you. Get over it. Naruto growled. Fu shook her head before sniffling slightly. Sorry, it's just that. Fu grinned. After all this time, I finally found out what happened to Cyclonus, and I know he didn't just abandon me. For 7 years, I thought he just left me because he didn't want me anymore, or that my training was finished or something along those lines. But now that I know the truth, no matter how vague the information is. So, thank you, Minato-kun. Naruto nodded before Fu managed to regain her composure. Now then, how you met Cyclonus? Get it over with, Wind Dragon. Naruto waved his hand in a lazy manner. Fu smiled as her memories with her surrogate father came rushing back. Yes. Well, I believe I wasn't even 2 months old when it all began. At least that's what Papa Cyclonus said. Flashback. Crocus, September 5, year X763. The city of Crocus is the capital of the Kingdom of Fury and is said to be the location of the king's residence. Due to it being the capital, Crocus is the largest and the most populated area in all of Fury, and is where many wealthy individuals lived. The families of the city of Crocus were among some of the best businessmen and women in the kingdom. Crocus was also said to be the home to the Magic Council's main branch, as well as the home to many a powerful mage. Currently there was a rather strong breeze blowing through the city, but it wasn't anything to be worried about, as the high winds were common in a place like Crocus. However, while there was merriment and laughing occurring in the streets of this magnificent city, a different situation was occurring at the Crocus General Hospital. Push, the doctor said with a forceful tone. Graw. I'm fucking trying, you whore. The woman cried out in pain as her hormones and the fact that her child's skull was being forced through her uterine walls. The woman had pale green hair and brown eyes that looked like pools of chocolate. Of course that effect was ruined due to the fact they were shut tight due to the pain she was feeling. Her body was rather curvaceous and she had breasts which bordered between C and D cups. Currently, she was wearing a hospital gown, her legs spread as she was still forcing her baby through her vagina. This was Mishiro Kuna. The nurses in the room could only wince as they heard the woman cry out in pain once more. Mishiro, dear. I know this is a bad time, but could you please stop crushing my hand? The man beside her was wincing in pain as he felt the bones in his right hand slowly being reduced to dust by his wife's superhuman grip. The man had crimson hair with a few stripes of black along the scalp area. His eyes were a deep orange and seemed to lack pupils. He had a goatee on his face and wore a black business suit. He was a rather handsome man, but the nervous look on his face due to his wife's demonic glare made him look so very childlike as he seemed to shrink away from the woman. This was Hiro Kuna. You fucking did this to me. If it weren't for you, I wouldn't be fucking feeling this. I'll rip your scrotum and tear out those fucking testicles of yours when this is fucking finished. Mishiro snarled, a demonic aura surrounding her body. Come on Mishiro-san, focus, now push. I can see the head. Mishiro panted to catch her breath before contracting her uterine walls and released another scream of exertion. Alright, Mishiro-san. The head is coming out, the doctor informed her. Haha, she's almost here. She's almost here, Mashiheim. Hiro chuckled as he wiped away the tears of joy that were about to come forth with his non-shattered hand. Mashiro panted, her face red from the blood rush. "One more push," the doctor exclaimed. "Grahhhh." Mashiro let tears of pain spill from her eyes as she gave one final, and very hard push. The screams that filled the air that day. The scream of Mashiro's pain, the scream of Hiro's hand finally being broken from the force of his wife's grip, and the scream of the newborn baby as she was brought into the world. The doctors cut the umbilical cord before wiping away the blood from the baby's body. Insert music. Fairy tale Kazuna. Mashiheim, you did it. Hiro smiled at his wife, but winced once more as he felt his broken hand shift. "Yeah, I guess I did." Mashiro grinned widely as she saw the doctors wiping her daughter. The doctor then handed the child over to the green-haired woman. The baby was wrapped in a pink blanket and had a full head of greeny baby gurgled slightly as her eyes opened, revealing the deep orange irises. "Hee, she has your eyes." Mashiro looked up at her husband. Hiro kissed the woman he loved on the lips before kissing their daughter on the forehead. The doctor let the two parents stare at their child for a few moments and could only smile at the happiness that was evident in their eyes. I don't mean to be rude, Kuna-san. But we will need to know whether you have chosen a name for your child so that we can make a birth certificate. However, it doesn't have to be immediate." The doctor informed the two parents. Hiro and Mashiro looked at the baby before looking at each other, matching grins on their faces. "Nami," they stated simultaneously. "Bless you." The doctor replied, thinking they had sneezed. The two sweat dropped at the doctor as the doctor blinked in confusion. "No, that's her name. Nami," they said. The doctor nodded before going over to a desk and signed Nami's name on the certificate that lay on the desk. He put in the baby girl's information such as her parents' names, occupations, her date of birth and the certificate's PIN number. Once that was done, the doctor placed the certificate in a brown envelope and handed it to the parents. "Here you go. Your daughter, Nami Kuna, is now a legitimate citizen of Fury." The doctor informed the happy parents as the father swiped away the envelope and cradled it, muttering, "My precious," every now and then. The doctor's sweat dropped at that before walking away. "We've arrived, Kuna-sama." The driver spoke as he parked the horse carriage. Hiro and Mashiro smiled at the little girl in Mashiro's arms before stepping out of the horse carriage. It had been approximately a week since the little girl's birth, and the reason why the two had now introduced Fu to her new home was because Mashiro had to recover from her labor pains as well as Hiro having to finish the last-minute touches on the baby's room. "Here we are, Nami-chan. Your new home." Hiro smiled as he and Mashiro stepped out of the carriage. Before the family was a magnificent mansion of an Old English design. While the mansion and the grounds themselves were not as large as some wealthy families such as that of the Hartfilia concern, it was still an impressive piece of architecture. The building was composed of red brick, some of the bricks being a lighter or darker shade than brick red and thus making them stand out. There were 4 cylindrical towers, each one being placed at a corner of the mansion. The mansion seemed to be composed of a main building with a smaller east wing and west wing on either side. Its roof was made of black tile. Surrounding the mansion was about 100 acres of open space with only a few small houses here and there which acted as tool sheds or as living quarters for some of the maids and or guards. "Hiro-sama." The staff members bowed as the newly formed parents entered the spacious home. "Yo." Hiro gave a small wave to the staff members before telling a few of the maids to aid in escorting Mashiro to the baby's room. "Of course, Hiro-sama. What is the baby's name, if you don't mind my asking?" The head maid, Runo, asked. Runo was a relatively old person, around 50 years of age. She had sky blue hair with chocolate brown eyes and wore a long green dress with a white apron over it. A white bonnet was worn in her hair. "Her name is Nami," Mashiro answered. "A fitting name, Mashiro-sama." Runo bowed with a grandmotherly smile on her face before taking 3 other maids to help get the baby's room ready for its new occupant. Hiro smiled as he watched his wife walk off before his butler walked up to him. "Hiro-sama, your 12 o'clock has arrived." Hiro looked at the nearby clock and saw that it was indeed 12 noon, so he complied and went to his study in order to meet with this person. Hiro entered the study and saw a rather short, stocky man with black hair in the shape of a bowl cut. He was wearing a dark green business suit and was smoking a cigar. The man grinned devilishly as he turned his head. Insert music. Fairy Tale Dark Guild. "Kuna-san, so nice to see you. I trust your wife is well." A glint of mischief shone in the man's beady black eyes. Hiro looked at the man with well-hidden disgust as he sat behind his desk in his comfy, black leather chair. "Cut the crap, Devon. Why the hell are you here?" Mr. Devon smiled at the red-haired man before him. "Your debts to the Devon theft family are piling, Kuna-san. If you don't give us the money in 1 month's time, there will be consequences," Mr. Devon spoke. "What? But that's not enough time," he exclaimed. Mr. Devon shrugged. "Not my problem. Now will you have the money ready by then or not? You're treading on thin ice. Kuna-san, and your debts are continuing to rise." Hiro ran his hands through his hair. "I paid at least 3/4 of my debt. There is no piling." If you're trying to lie to me, then get out. Mr. Devon scowled at the younger man. Kuna-san, that is a lie. You borrowed large sums of money from us and failed to pay back the entirety of it. You've barely managed to return half of the money you owe us. You've used up some to pay the hospital, some for the creation of your newborn's room, another set of money to pay the bills for this estate, and with your toy company almost on the brink of bankruptcy due to the inability to keep up with the supply and demand of your customers. You're going to go in a downward spiral, my friend. Mr. Devon told the man as he took another drag from his cigar. Now, I will say this one more time. Give me my money by the end of next month, or you and your family will suffer the consequences. Hiro rose up from his chair with a snarl on his face. You touch Mashiro and Nami, and I will end you. I don't care how I do it, if I have to use whatever piece of my fortune I have left, I will find a way to end you, Devon. Now get the fuck out of my house. Mr. Devon chuckled at Masamune before taking another pull from his cigar. You can try, Kuna-san. But you will fail, for unlike you, I have friends in high places. Remember, you have till the end of the week. Mr. Devon then rose from the chair and exited the study. Hiro sighed in frustration before leaning back into his chair and pinched the bridge of his nose. Things were not looking good. However, as the man was busy musing over what he was about to do, he nor Devon had noticed that during the entire conversation, the door had been opened slightly in order for a certain blue-haired maid to hear the conversation. 1 month later, Kuna Estate, I want those rocking horses ready for shipment. Well then. Send those bouncy balls there into storage if they're deflated, and why the hell are these aren't those wee willy dolls not boxed? I told you all to do that a week ago, Hiro panted, face red with rage as he conversed with his head of exportation using the audio lacrima. Hiro then hung up and looked up as Mashiro entered with his 1-month daughter in her arms. Something wrong, Hiro-kun? Mashiro frowned. Nami gurgled happily, unaware of the seriousness of the situation. Those idiots at the company haven't readied our shipments yet, so we're going to be behind schedule if they don't get off there. Mashiro glared at her husband, silencing him as he was about to say a bad word in front of his green-haired daughter. Well, I can see you're a bit stressed. Come for lunch, Nami-chan is hungry, isn't that right? Mashiro cooed. Nami giggled excitedly and Hiro bent down and kissed his daughter's forehead. Sure, come on, Nami-chan. Time for food, Hiro yelled out, pumping his fist into the air. Fugu. Nami yelled out in excitement as she copied her father's actions as he took her from Mashiro's arms and sped off towards the dining area. Mashiro shook her head, smiling. I swear, that man is like a child on the inside. After eating lunch with his family, Hiro was about to head back to work when Runo walked up to him. Hiro-sama, that Devon man is here to see you again, Runo said with a scowl, older woman's expression before taking on a serious expression himself. Tell him I'm not home. Now why would you say that, Kuna-san? Hiro and Runo turned sharply to see the short man, cigar and all, standing behind Runo. What the? How did you get in? Runo exclaimed. The door was open, so I thought I'd let myself in. Now then, Kuna-san, shall we talk? Hiro led the shorter man to the study before reaching underneath the desk and pulled out a black briefcase. Here's your money, you bastard. Now get out. He snarled. Mr. Devon opened the briefcase and saw the large amount of jewels in the case. The stocky man grinned widely, but paused. Mr. Devon sniffed the case and his face twisted into one of anger. Kuna, you're missing a whole 2 million jewels. Hiro's eyes widened in shock. How? How can you do that? You only have 3 million in this case. You owe the Devon theft family 5 million. I told you if you didn't pay the money by this time that there would be consequences. Mr. Devon snarled. Hiro's orange eyes widened in fear. No, please. Just give me a little bit more time. By the end of this week I'll have your 2 million. We're about to send out another shipment of product to Frisia and Magnolia. You'll get your money, please. Mr. Devon shook his head. I told you, Kuna, that I would get you if you didn't pay back the entirety of your loans. Seeing as you haven't, you better watch out. Devon grinned evilly before leaving the Kuna estate. Hiro had continued to sit in his study chair before he walked out of the study and pressed a button and the communication lacrima activated, revealing the head guard's image. Security, I want you to triple your efforts on the amount of people on the estate. There's been a threat against me and my family. As you wish, Kuna-sama. We will protect you and your family with all we have, the head guard said on the other end of the communication before saluting. Hiro nodded before taking his finger off of the button. For 1 week, Hiro was on edge. His guards had not reported any intruders during the past week, but they continued their work. However, one night while Hiro and Mashiro were sleeping, a shadowy figure ran through the estate's large garden, easily knocking the guards unconscious with chloroform-filled tissue being placed against their faces. Once all the guards were knocked unconscious, the shadow stopped at the walls of the Kuna mansion. Fire magic. Sticky fire. A purple magic seal formed in the figure's hands and purple flames formed in his hands. The purple flames extended from the figure's hands and it latched onto the windowsill before the figure was pulled up. He pulled himself up and opened the window before entering. Target found. The figure pulled out the small communication lacrima from his pocket. Good, take the girl and get out. Mr. Devon told us that was all we had to do. The figure nodded and cut off the communication before picking up the month-and-a-half-old girl from her crib. Doing so gently so as not to wake her. The figure jumped back onto the windowsill and the moon shone its light on the figure's back, revealing the symbol on the back. In a crimson color there was the image of a knight's helmet with two lances crossing over each other beneath the helmet. The symbol of the Dark Guild, Black Knight. The man jumped off the windowsill with Nami and vanished into the night. The next morning, the entirety of the Kuna estate went into a panic. Nami Kuna had been kidnapped. Unknown location, year X763 currently. The kidnapper from Black Knight was heading for the meeting point far outside of Crocus City's boundaries. The kidnapper rode atop the SE magic vehicle, speeding through the area. As the kidnapper was driving, he stopped supplying his magic energy to the SE plug as he realized he had reached the meeting point. However, what he saw wasn't something he had expected. Insert music. Naruto Gaara's theme. Surrounding the area were destroyed pieces of trees and cracked earth. He looked down at the ground and gasped as he saw the large imprint of what looked like a clawed hand of some sort. The Black Knight member quivered in fear before unplugging himself from the SE and walked into the center of the clearing. There were also 4 humans laying in random locations, members of the group he was supposed to meet with. He then heard a soft groan and ran towards the source and found another one of his fellow Black Knight members was still breathing. The man was bleeding from numerous lacerations covering his body and his left arm was bent at an odd angle. What happened here? The kidnapper asked. The man coughed up a glob of blood. Attacked with wind. Too strong. Run. The man then gave one last gasp before dying. The sound of deep breathing then filled the air in front of the kidnapper. The kidnapper froze before his head slowly tilted upwards and he literally pissed himself as he stared into the shining yellow irises of the mighty beast before him. Dr. Dragon. The kidnapper exclaimed before taking off. However, he didn't get far as the dragon's forelimbs stretched out after the man and slammed down on the kidnapper, crushing him and killing him instantly. The dragon dragged the body back towards it and ate it in a single bite along with the man who had died earlier. The dragon sniffed the air and growled before lumbering over to the SE. The dragon raised its claws and was about to completely crush the vehicle only to hear crying. The dragon bent down and looked at the vehicle and spotted the crying baby. The dragon mused. A youngling. Nami continued to cry loudly and the dragon sighed, a large gust of wind forming from that single exhale of breath. Ah yes, I forgot. Humans are not capable of speech at the age that you are at. The dragon sniffed Nami, girl. The green-haired, orange-eyed girl then stopped crying when she settled her gaze on the green-scaled reptile before her. Nami reached out with her hand and touched the dragon's muzzle. The reptile snorted and released a growl. You dare touch me, human. I am the mighty wind dragon, Cyclonus. Cyclonus roared. Nami whimpered before going into another fit of crying. Cyclonus sighed before he raised his twin pairs of wings. He then pulled the wings back and prepared to strike down the child only to pause as a strike of conscience met him. You are too young, child. You have not even lived more than a month in this world. I could easily kill you and I wouldn't have to bother with you. Cyclonus's 4 wings twitched slightly, but the green-scaled reptile dropped his appendages before bending down to the girl. But if I do that, I would feel guilty from taking the life of such an innocent young one as yourself, and I am not like that bastard Agnologia. You will be my daughter, girl. Your name will be a memorable one worthy of the Wind Dragon. From this day on, your name is Fu, Wind Dragonslayer. Nami, now named Fu, giggled at the new name she was given before a grunt of effort was heard from the girl. Cyclonus's nose picked up on the horrible smell released from Fu's gaseous release. Disgusting human. Fu giggled once more and clapped her hands. End flashback. And that was how I met Papa Cyclonus. We met Chome 7 years later and took her in when she had no place to go. An interesting tale, Wind Dragon. Though, I am confused as to how you know of what happened prior to your kidnapping, as I am very sure Cyclonus would have not been able to grant you that information. Naruto said. Fu smiled at the blonde before replying. Well, when I turned 12, Papa Cyclonus sent me to Crocus City for a little human interaction. I had managed to somehow find myself at the Kuna estate and I met Runo, the headmaid. At first she didn't recognize me, but she eventually did and welcomed me back. I was confused as well because, well, I never met Runo, but I had the feeling that I knew her from somewhere. Runo explained everything to me, from my birth in the hospital up to my kidnapping. She told me my real name, WHD, a few other things. So why didn't you stay with your parents then? Surely you would have. I would have, at the drop of a hat, I would have gone back to the estate to live, but Runo told me how my two-san, Hiro Kuna, his toy company had crashed a few weeks before my arrival and he had been sent to a mental institution where he died from Alzheimer's disease. My ka-chan, Mashiro, she had went into a depression ever since I had been kidnapped.
She refused to eat much, sleep much, move much. She had passed away 3 years later.
Naruto remained silent at Fu's explanation before climbing to his feet. Fu stood up as well, dusting her white clothes off before facing Naruto. So, should I call you Minato-sama now, seeing as I am now your servant? Naruto shook his head. You are not my servant, a subordinate is what I called you. You will have the freedom that you and Chome have, as I merely need you and Chome to be my eyes and ears for anything going on outside of wherever I am. Huh? As you may know, I am the Ogono Fujin and Kurama is the Onibi Myobo. We are both high-ranking criminals per the Magic Council's judgment of our power. As such, I will be required to traveling a lot in order to avoid detection, but I will also be doing this in order to add more members to the spy network that I am in the middle of developing. My former swords teacher and his daughter, the Ice Dragonslayer, will also be members of this spy network. Ice Dragonslayer? Naruto nodded in confirmation. Yes, but if I go into the depth of it all we will get off topic. Now then, as I was saying, you will be given your alleged freedom, but when I call on you, you will come to me and whatever I order you to do, you will follow it. Am I clear, Wind Dragon? Fu slowly nodded. So why are you making this spy network anyway? I need to keep an eye on what's going on in Fury. There's been a rather drastic increase in the number of dark guilds recently, and 2 of them, Raventail and Grimoire Heart, are looking to try and recruit me into their ranks. Obviously, I will not be joining them, so I will need you and Chome to do what you can to pick up any sort of information on the dark guilds, and don't be hesitant to accept information regarding the light guilds, such as Fairy Tail, Blue Pegasus and whatnot. Are there any light guilds you would want specific information on, Minato-kun? Naruto paused before raising his head. In the Wood Sea, there's a guild known as Cage Shelter. I visited it a few times, but only had enough time to do it once per year. I would like you to pay some specific attention to it. Wendy Marvell. The Sky Dragonslayer is a member of that guild. Can't say I've heard of Cage Shelter before, Fu said. The master there is an illusion magic user, so that is most likely why. So, keep an eye on my student when you go to check up on Cage Shelter. Naruto opened up the pocket dimension once more and pulled out 2 pieces of paper and his magic pen. He quickly drew a seal matrix on each paper before handing one to Fu before slapping the second one on Fu's visible midsection. The green-haired girl's eyes widened as she saw the paper release a crimson glow before vanishing into her skin. What did you do? The one in your hand is a seal that allows for telepathic communication with me when you wish to contact me or vice versa. The one I planted on you is seal magic. Amaterasu Formula number 56. It's a seal that will ensure that you will not try to rebel against me should you choose to. It will set your pain sensors to maximum and thus you will feel extreme levels of pain, so I would advise you not try to anything against me. You bastard! Fu sent a blast at Naruto, but the blonde dodged to the side before raising his right fist. He raised his middle and index fingers. He then pointed the fingers at Fu's stomach and suddenly the Wind Dragonslayer fell to her knees, screaming in pain as she felt as if her nerves were on fire. I told you, Wind Dragon. Stand against me, and you will suffer the consequences. Naruto snarled, his eyes flashing white. Naruto cancelled the flow of magic to the seal and Fu stopped screaming. Fu panted and glared at Naruto, her orange eyes burning with contempt towards her master. A few minutes later, Kurama and Chome returned to their partners and landed atop their heads. Oi, brat. You're awake, that's good. So I trust you didn't thrash Fu too bad when you woke up. Please, as if Fu would take a beating from your weak little partner. Chome was suddenly pulled towards Naruto by an invisible force. Naruto controlled the wind and created a vacuum to suck Chome and pull her towards him. Naruto caught the exceed in his hands and his white eyes stared into her black ones. Care to say that again? Naruto. Put Chome down. Kurama snarled, paws set ablaze. Naruto stared at the fox-costumed feline atop his head, ready to punch his skull should he strike at the feline's sibling. Naruto growled as Kurama before throwing Chome forcefully at Fu, sending both Exceed and Dragonslayer rolling backwards from the force. Happy? Naruto said with a monotone. Kurama's eyes narrowed before sighing. It'll do. Just be glad I'm in a good mood. Minato-kun. Why did Kurama just call you Naruto? Fu asked. It's my real name. I don't trust easily, but after having our little chat, I can trust you to a certain degree. My real name is Naruto. Oh, the orange-eyed girl replied. Know that if you reveal my real name to anybody who I am not affiliated it. Naruto glanced at her stomach. Fu nodded and the two Exceed could only wonder just what the hell happened while they were gone. Oh, Naruto. Check this out. Kurama reached into his hood and pulled out a rolled-up piece of paper. Naruto took the paper and unrolled it to reveal the wanted poster for him and Kurama. Ogono Fujin and Onibi Myobo. SS class rank criminals. Flee on sight. Do not engage in battle. Naruto read. Fu and Chome stared at the two in amazement and fear. SS class ranked mages? That's incredible. They exclaimed. Naruto and Kurama grinned widely at that and said grins were making Chome and Fu a bit uneasy. About damn time we got the recognition we deserved, Kurama smirked. I agree. Flea on sight is a nice touch as well. The son of Acknowledgia added his own 2 cents. Fu and Chome's sweat dropped. What is up with these guys? Naruto stood up and Kurama sprouted his wings and floated next to him. Alright, Kurama. We must move on. Naruto channeled wind magic into his feet and miniature tornadoes formed underneath his boots allowing him to fly. Bye Kurama ni-chan. See ya, Chome. The crimson feline waved a paw to the 2 females. Naruto and Fu watched each other and gave nods to each other. Naruto and Kurama then flew above the trees and with a cry of Fudon. Tobu and Era. Max speed. The 2 vanished with a pair of sonic booms as they broke the sound barrier. Unknown location. Ultir and Merity trudged through the snowy landscape. Ultir-san, where are we going? Merity asked over the howling winds. She wiped the snow from her pink locks before a large blast of snow comically struck her in the face and sent her to the ground. The older woman looked down at her pink-haired partner before pulling her to her feet. I'm going to visit someone who I haven't seen in a long time, she answered cryptically. Merity nodded as she held onto Ultir's leg so that she wouldn't lose track of the older woman. Ultir continued to walk, Merity trailing behind, before they came to a stop. Huh? Why'd we stop you? Ultir-san, Merity corrected herself as she had nearly said the abbreviation that Ultir mysteriously despised. Ultir looked down at the younger girl with a small smile before gesturing in front of her. A small cottage met the eyes of both Grimoire Heart members. The golden glow that shone through the windows along with the stream of black smoke that rose from the chimney indicated that the lights were on, and with a fire burning there was most likely, there was someone home. Walked up to the cottage and Ultir raised her hand to knock. The dark purple-haired woman paused in her action, biting her lower lip as if contemplating whether or not to knock. In the end, Ultir chose to not knock and simply waltzed into the cottage. Merity followed behind the older female and glanced around. The cottage was rather spacious for such a small living establishment. They were currently in the living room which had a couch fit for 3 people and 1 small lounge chair which was much closer to the fireplace which also had a fire currently burning. The smoke rising up through the chimney. To the left of the living room was a small kitchen and to their right was what would appear to be the bedroom. However, the most surprising aspect of the house was there were a lot of cat-themed things around the house. There were statues of cats on the mantle atop the fireplace. There were numerous photos of different cats hanging on the walls. There were images of cats imprinted on the pillows that lay on the couch and lounge chair. Hell, there was even one of those Kit Kat clocks that had the pendulum tail and moving eyes. Ultir-san, why are there so many cat-like things here? The 12-year-old whispered. Because this person is a feline fanatic. Try not to mention that though as I don't want to have to deal with trying to calm an angry cat person. Ultir replied. The rosette nodded and sat on the couch with Ultir. The 2 waited for a while before footsteps were heard prior to the sound of a flushing toilet. Turning in the direction of the bedroom, the footsteps grew closer before the door opened and revealed a beautiful woman. The woman appeared to be at least the same age as Ultir, around 19, and had blonde hair which was tied back into a low ponytail by a dark purple band. The woman had dark-colored eyes. She was currently wearing a black t-shirt with the image of House Cat on it, showed off her rather impressive bust and a pair of long, cotton pants and fuzzy cat slippers. The blonde yawned as she walked out of the door before sitting in the lounge chair and staring into the orange flames. The room remained silent, only the crackling of the fire and the soft howling of the wind outside was heard, but they were mainly white noise. The woman turned and looked at Ultir with a small smile on her face. Insert music. Naruto Shippuden Gurren. Nice to see you again, Ul-chan, NYA. The woman smiled, putting on a cat-like face. Yugito. Ultir nodded. The woman, now identified as Yugito, frowned slightly at Ultir's response. Merity looked rather confused as to why Ultir didn't lash out at the woman calling Ultir Ul-chan, unlike with her. Geez, you're so serious, NYA. Unlike you. Nei-san. Yugito continued to frown at Ultir's use of the Montoni in her speech. Geez, we're twin sisters and you still don't act friendly with me. You really got messed up when those freaks from the Magic Council took you, NYA. And did a nice job of raising you to be like her. She's our Ka-chan, Ultir. You can't expect me to not gain some of her attributes. Besides, I don't know why you didn't tell me you ran away after you escaped from the council. Sure got Gray and Leon to teach and she saw them as her own, but just because she seemed happy doesn't mean she didn't miss you. Ultir glared at her sister before looking at the fire. Yugito then got up to make some tea for her and Ultir. She returned with the refreshments and handed the dark-haired woman her cup. Jasmine. I remember it was your favorite one when you first found out I took over Ur's cottage and came to visit. Yugito said with a sad smile as she remembered the first visit from her twin sister. Ultir nodded and hid the happy look on her face, but her eyes betrayed her as the look of joy filled them. Yugito chuckled at her sister's expression before taking a sip of the green tea she had in her cup. "So, why did you come here?" Yugito asked, a serious expression on her face. "And I know it's not just to pop in and say hello to your Nei-san." "Yes, Yugito. I need you to help me." Yugito's eyes widened at that before chuckling. "The great Altair Milkovich needs my help? Nya," Yugito laughed. Once she calmed down, Yugito looked at her sister with a smirk. "So what does my little Imoudo need from me?"
I need you to keep tabs on these two individuals. You're the best spy assassin I know, and with her on your side, you'd no doubt be able to find them easily. And stop calling me Imoudo, I only came out 1 minute after you. We're practically the same age." Yugito ignored the dark woman as Altair took out a piece of rolled up paper from between her cleavage and handed it to her sister. Yugito took the paper and unrolled it to reveal the images of the Ogano Fujin and Anabi Myobu.
He looks cute. Nya. Sure you don't want me to follow them for some ulterior motive of yours, Imoudo? Nya. Yugito winked. Altair blushed lightly at that comment. "I said that too." Merity spoke. Yugito turned to the pink-haired girl and raised an eyebrow. "Who's the kid?" she asked, now taking notice of her. "She's now taking notice of me." Merity's sweat dropped. Altair cleared her throat as she fought down the blush before answering. This is Merity. She's a member of Grimoire Heart like me and a member of the Seven of Kin of Purgatory." Yugito whistled in acknowledgement. "You're probably really strong, kid. Well, with my Imoudo by your side, you'd no doubt have been made strong." Yugito then returned to the paper in her hand. She focused on the wanted poster and whistled in amazement. "Wow, SS class and flea on sight. These guys must be really good, and I know you have a thing for strong guys." Yugito winked at Altair, causing the woman to blush once more. It was a habit of Yugito's to tease Altair whenever she stopped by, even if it was only for doing tasks such as these. For some unknown reason, Altair would always blush when Yugito asked or commented Altair's love life, and thus it made it fun for Yugito to tease her. "So, Ogono Fujin and Onibi Myobu, you got anything that would help us track them?" Yugito asked. Altair reached into her cleavage once more. Just how many things can she fit in there? Merity wondered with a sweat drop. Altair pulled out 2 glass tubes. Each one had a few strands of hair in it. One had blonde hair, the other had crimson. "I got these from the hairs that were found on Zankro's and Azuma's bodies after they were put into near-death states from fighting the two." Yugito took the tubes and laid them out on the coffee table in front of her. "Interesting. So these two managed to put down Azuma and Zankro. Nya. This is going to be fun. I'll help you, Imoudo." "What do you want in exchange?" Altair asked. Yugito grinned like the felines she loved so very much. "You know what I want," Yugito said. Altair sighed, rolling her eyes before walking up to Yugito. The blonde-haired woman stood up to her twin sister, and then suddenly, the younger of the twins was enveloped in a hug and Yugito was rubbing her face against Altair's breasts. "They're so soft, Nya. Yugito purred, muttering, "Nya," with each stroke of her face against the dark-haired woman's impressive chest. Merity's sweat dropped at the scene. "Is this really Altair-san's Nei-chan?" she thought. Yugito continued for another minute before stopping. "Nya, I love to that. They're just like Ka-chan's," Yugito said as she plopped back down on the lounge chair. Altair nodded, a blank look on her face as she sat back down next to Merity. "So when can you get started?" Altair asked. Yugito thought for a while and looked at the Kit Kat clock on the wall. It was about 12:30, noon. Yugito made a purring sound as she thought of it. "We'll start tomorrow. I need to prepare my things." "Utabi," Yugito called out. The 3 occupants of the cottage suddenly faced the fire when it changed from yellow-orange to blue-black. The blue-black flames suddenly gained a pair of eyes, one green and one yellow. The blue-black FLR replaced, the flames changing back to normal as the ghost-like flames left it. The flames then gained physical form and became a dark blue cat with black flame-like patterns. The eyes of the feline lacked pupils and were dichromatic, one yellow and one green. A large grin was present on the cat's face and one tail made entirely of ghostly flames swished behind the cat. A pair of white wings with black flame patterns flapped on the cat's back. "You called, kitten?" Matabi asked before looking at Altair and Merity. "Altair, so nice to see you again. Would you like to see your Ka-chan again?" "I don't want to see that woman's face," Altair hissed. The Bakenemo frowned for a moment. "She said she was sorry, Altair. She thought you were dead," the blue-black Exceed spoke. Altair remained quiet before looking at the Hellfire Exceed. "You and Yugito Nei-chan have your assignments. Merity, let's go." Merity nodded and bowed in respect to Yugito and Matabi before she and Altair exited the cottage. Yugito sighed as she ran her fingers through her head. "I swear, Imouto is so emotional when it comes to Ka-chan," the blonde said. Matabi nodded. "So, who are our targets?" "We're not assassinating, we're just doing some recon. Here?" Yugito handed the paper to Matabi, who held it in her claws, careful not to activate her natural hellfire ability and burn the paper. I've seen that kitsune before. Matabi narrowed her eyes at the kitsune's image. Yugito raised an eyebrow. Really? Yeah. It's my brother. I recognize those eyes anywhere, even in black and white. That's Kurama. The Bakaneko handed the wanted poster to her partner before looking outside. I look forward to seeing you again, Kurama-ni-san. Skies of Fury, Grimoire Heart Airship, insert music, Naruto Shippuden Cowan. Within the medical wing of the airship of Grimoire Heart, the two unconscious members of the seven kin of Purgatory, Zankro and Azuma, were lying in their beds. The heart monitors beeped to show that they were alive. A numerous amount of tubes were connected to their bandaged bodies to deliver morphine, nutrients and blood to their bodies. Oxygen masks were also covering their mouths and noses. However, while the two were sleeping, a small, black devil-like creature appeared in a plume of black smoke with a wicked cackle. Lucy watched the two and went over to the healing members of Grimoire Heart. Lucy raised his claws and sliced off the tubes before poking Azuma and Zankro where their hearts were located. Suddenly, their hearts shot into overdrive as they began to undergo seizures. Lucy smiled and gave another cackle as he spun. Lucy was enveloped in black smoke and suddenly entered the oxygen machines, moving through the vents that took oxygen from the air and purified it in order to convert into pure, clean oxygenated air. The black smoke filled the room and entered the oxygen machines. Zankro and Azuma suddenly began to inhale the toxic substance. Their heart monitors began to go off the charts. Their oxygen supply was compromised and their hearts were doing their best to supply oxygen through their bodies. However, Lucy continued to supply the black smog to both kin of Purgatory. The heart monitors beeping continued to move at a faster rate until finally, a single, extended beep was heard. Their hearts gave out and their ability to breathe clean air was gone. The convulsing bodies became still. Lucy cackled as he left the oxygen machines and returned to physical form. Admiring his handiwork, the devil creature clapped his hands with glee before spinning rapidly. His wings wrapped around his body and he vanished in a plume of black smoke, his objective complete. Zankro and Azuma were dead. Snowpeaks, Fury, insert music, Naruto Shippuden Seika. Ultir felt a small pulse of magic. She reached into her cleavage and pulled out her teal lacrima orb. She pushed a small amount of magic and a shadowed image appeared in its depths. It is done, Milkovich, excellent. I will send you all the payment by tomorrow, you know the regular meeting place. I would hope so. Very well, we will meet there. Judging by the snow in the background and your angry scowl, I'm guessing you're visiting Yugito-chan. Tell her I said, hello. Ultir remained silent as she glared at the figure in the lacrima. Fuck you and stay away from my sister, asshole. She shut it off and the image vanished. Who was that, Ultir-san? Merity asked as Ultir shoved the lacrima back down her cleavage. That is none of your concern, Merity. She answered before walking off, Merity trailing behind. Raventail. Outskirts of Fury, year X 784. Iwan Drayar stood outside the rocky spire that was the Raventail Guild. The mysterious guild was still very much a secret to most of the world, but with Makarov's use of the Magic Council through Yajima, they were no doubt getting closer and closer to finding out about his guild's existence. Tu-san. You old fool. Yuan cursed his father. Their relationship had always been strained, but with Yuan's excommunication, it had only made things worse between the father and son. However, Yuan wasn't outside of his guild house to contemplate on his relationship with the elderly wizard saint. The black-haired guild master looked up with a wicked grin on his face. Ah, so you actually came? Yuan said. Yes, I have. Here's your payment for killing Zankro and Azuma. Yuan held out his hands and took the briefcase which had numerous amounts of jewels within them. The bills would definitely work to provide capital for the guild. Thank you, Ultir-san. The female member of Grimoire Heart nodded. She looked a few yards away, watching Merity picking pieces of stone from the rocky wasteland and pelting them into the distance. Something to cure her boredom. So, did you tell Yugito-chan hello for me? The older man asked as he stroked his beard. Ultir snarled before grabbing Iwan around his throat. Do not address my Nei-chan in such a manner, bastard. If you even so much as look at her with those disgusting eyes of yours, I will affect the age of your guild and I will make it crumble to dust, killing you and everyone in it. Ultir's eyes burned with hatred for the black-haired man before pushing him away. Now then, what information do you have for me? Surely Purhito would have something to tell me. Ultir frowned as the man before her used Master Hades' true name. The name he had as the second master of fairy tale. Master Hades. She hissed at the man, has nothing to tell you, however, he did say one thing. What is that? Ultir turned around and began to walk off before turning back slightly, looking at him with one visible eyes. Do not try to look for lumen histoire or else you will die trying. Of course, I would welcome your venture as I would like nothing more than to see you no longer existing on this plane. Yuan's eyes narrowed upon hearing that. How did that old fool know about that? Yuan thought. He hadn't spoken to anyone, not even his spy network, with respect to the ancient room said to be hidden somewhere within fairy tale. Ultir stopped as soon as she reached Merity before looking down at the shorter female. Ultir-san, are we done? The dark purple-haired woman nodded. Yes, but we must return to the guild. It has already been 2 days since we left. I will return to the Magic Council. You go back to the airship, understood? Merity nodded to her superior as Ultir performed Requipan changed into her Magic Council disguise. What should I tell Master Hades if he asks where we went? Ultir frowned as she thought for a while. She hadn't really come up with much of an excuse, but then again, she was the informant for Grimoire Heart. Tell him I was doing some spying, researching Raven Tail. It was not a lie, but it also wasn't the truth. The pink-haired girl nodded. Purple magic seals formed beneath them and the two then vanished in flashes of purple light, teleporting to their respective locations. Fairy Tale, Magnolia Town. Mirajane Strauss, the beautiful poster girl of Fairy Tale, walked through the spacious guild with a tray of beer in her hand. She handed the beers to the customers, smiling cheerfully as she heard them compliment her looks. Mira-chan, you're so lovely today. Mira-chan, you're too sxy to be single. Wanna join me for a night on the town? Sxy girls with beer. My dream is a reality. You boys really should calm yourselves down, you're going to spoil with all the sweet talk. Mirajane giggled as she walked away, knowing full well the men were checking out her ass. Also, if you don't stop staring at my ass. A demonic dark aura formed around her body causing the men to sweat with fear. I'll have to hurt you three. Yes, Mira-chan. We apologize. They chorused. Mira nodded with a devilish smirk before resting the tray on the bar counter. She then spotted the newest recruit to the ranks of Fairy Tale. A young, 17-year-old girl by the name of Lucy. Come to think of it, she never told us her last name. Mira realized. The bar waitress walked over to the bored Lucy. Lucy-san. Lucy looked up, her brown eyes shifting from watching Natsu Dragneel and Happy the Flying Cat who were busy trying to find a job for them to do, to the beautiful woman before her. Oh, hey Mirajane. Please, Lucy-san. I told you, just call me Mira. Lucy nodded with a cute smile. So, would you like anything to drink or eat? Nah, I'm good, but thanks anyway. However, as she looked around the guild, Lucy noticed one person was not amongst the guild. Mira-san? Yes, Lucy-san. Where's Master Makarov? I haven't seen him since this morning. Mira smiled as she prepared to answer the blonde's question. Oh, well you see the Magic Council has arranged that one every month. The guild masters of all the major legal guilds which include us, Fairy Tale, Blue Pegasus, Quattro Cerberus, Phantom Lord, etc., would come together to discuss the status of their guilds and whatnot. So basically, it's just another boring meeting, Mira shrugged. Yeah, I guess. If you put it that way. Lucy sighed once more as she watched Natsu and Happy argue over a request on the board. Natsu picked up a piece of paper and waved it in front of Happy. Look, why don't we take this one? Bandit's Steel Museum artifact. Pay is 35 feet 000 joules. I don't know Natsu. It's kind of cheap, the blue feline commented. Natsu frowned. You think so? The Exceed responded. Natsu stared at the board once more only to be hit in the side with a chair sending him rolling on the ground. Will you just pick a damn request already? There are other people here too, ya know. Natsu rubbed his side before glaring at the owner of the voice. The black-haired Ice Make Mage looked the fire user. Said Ice Make Mage was wearing a pair of black jeans and brown combat boots and had a necklace with a sword-shaped charm hanging from it. He was currently wearing no shirt and was oddly, and seeming to do so unconsciously, stripped the pants and boots he was wearing leaving him in only his boxers. You stupid snowcone, what the hell? Shut it Pinky and pick a job already, yelled Grey Fullbuster. Don't tell me what to do you perverted stripper. Natsu and Grey clashed, foreheads pushing against one another. Auras of fire and ice surrounding their respective forms causing the viewers who were watching it to sweat drop. Do those two ever get along? Lucy asked as she watched Happy seem to tumble through the air above the two rivals, cries of, "Aye sir," being uttered from his mouth. Oh, yes. It's a very common occurrence to see Natsu and Grey fight, but they are best friends deep down. Lucy's sweat dropped as she watched the two start to roll on the ground, trying to pin the other. How deep are we talking? Mira giggled at the blonde's question only for everyone to suddenly go silent as they heard loud thuds, as if gigantic footsteps were being taken. The guild members all shivered in fear as they watched the closed doors rattle with each thud. Insert music. Urza's theme, seems that she is back. Mira said with a stress on the word, she. Lucy looked confused and tilted her head as she looked at Mira. Mira-san, who is she? Lucy asked. Mira gave an unnaturally happy smile, even for one such as Mirajane. You'll see when she comes through the doors. Lucy stared along with everyone else as the loud thuds became louder and louder. The proximity between the owner of those thuds and the door growing smaller by the second. Finally, there was silence. The guild gulped simultaneously before the doors were slammed open by a single H&T attractive woman with long scarlet hair that reached her mid-back and had deep brown eyes. She wore a white blouse, but that was obscured by the armor that she wore, which also covered her arms. A dark blue skirt and dark brown boots completed the outfit. Held high above her head was a gigantic horn which was beautifully decorated with glittering gems. "Who is that?" Lucy exclaimed upon seeing the red-haired woman enter, carrying the gigantic horn as if it were made of paper. The red-haired woman slammed the horn down on the ground, causing the tables and chairs to fly up a few feet off the ground before settling back into their previous positions. "That's Urza Scarlet, also known as the Titania of Fairy Tail. She's an S-class mage and the strongest female in Fairy Tail," Mira informed her blonde friend. Urza looked around the guild, a scowl present on her face. "Now what is wrong with this guild? I've been gone for only a few weeks and already you guys have gotten in so much trouble. Wakaba, stop smoking, it's bad for you. Nab, stop standing there and just pick a job already. Vegeta, stop dancing like a fool inside the guild and do your dancing outside. All of you. This guild is filthy, start cleaning it. Now where's Natsu and Gray?" "Over here, Urza," Gray yelled as he and Natsu wrapped their arms around each other's shoulders. "See, we're all best friends. We get along great." "Aye," Natsu said with a salute. Lucy's eyes bugged out of her head at the sudden change in attitude between the fire and ice mages. "He's acting like happy," she yelled as she saw Natsu suddenly take on a facial expression similar to the aforementioned cat. Urza frowned as she observed the guild before turning over to Mira and Lucy. Urza raised an eyebrow out of curiosity before walking over to them. "Hey, Mira-Jane. Urza-san, nice to see you back. I'm guessing your horn is the spoils of your victory?" Urza nodded. "Yup, they even decorated it for me. It looks so pretty, doesn't it?" Mira nodded with a strained smile on her face. Even with her nice demeanor, the demon Mira-Jane within her longed to get into another confrontation with the Titania. Urza gave a confident smirk to her former rival before taking notice of Lucy. "Who are you? I don't remember seeing your face around here." Lucy gave a small wave to Urza. "Hi, I'm Lucy. I just recently joined. I'm a celestial spirit mage." Urza nodded and held out a hand for Lucy to shake. Lucy shook the woman's hand, only for her hand to suddenly feel as if it were literally being shattered like glass. "Holy shit, her grip is strong," the blonde thought. "It's a pleasure to meet a new member of the guild. I hope you have enjoyed your stay here so far." Lucy smiled as she felt relief upon Urza letting go of her hand. Her monstrous strength was nothing to sneeze at. "I have actually. Natsu was actually looking for a job for Happy and I to do with him." Urza smirked at that before turning to see Natsu and Gray glaring at one another. Natsu, Gray. The two rivals immediately returned to their facade of being best friends. "Aye." Natsu saluted. "He's acting like Happy again," Lucy exclaimed. Urza walked over to the two and pulled them up from the ground where they were sitting. "Listen, I need you two to come with me for a mission. It's a tough mission, so I will be needing some assistance and I would like you both to accompany me." Urza smiled when she saw Gray put on a confident smirk and Natsu put on a toothy grin, flames dancing from his hands. "I'm all fired up now," Natsu exclaimed. "Try not to destroy anything, flame brain," Gray commented. "What'd you say, stripper snowman? I said you got flames for brains, you hothead." However, before their argument could lengthen, Urza had already raised her fists and crashed them down on both mages' skulls. Two large bumps formed on their heads, smoking from the impact. "How many times have I told you to? Do not fight," Urza roared. Natsu and Gray rubbed their aching craniums before standing back up. "I don't know, over 1,000 I guess." "Baka, don't answer her," Gray hissed. Urza turned around and Natsu, Happy and Gray followed her. "Mira-Jane," the white-haired woman turned to the scarlet-haired woman. "Yes, Urza-san. Natsu, Gray and I will be going on a mission now." Mira-Jane's eyes widened before nodding. "Mira-san, you look so surprised. What's wrong?" Lucy asked. Mira turned to Lucy with a small smile on her face. "It's nothing. It's just that with Natsu, Urza and Gray all on the same team for a mission. They're practically the strongest team in Fairy Tail." Lucy's eyes widened before hearing her name being called. "Lucy." The blonde looked to see Natsu and Happy waving at her. "Lucy, what are you sitting around for? Are you coming or not?" The son of Ignil bellowed, flames forming around his fists. Lucy blinked her brown eyes before smiling at the pink-haired mage. "Sure." The celestial spirit mage shot out of her chair and ran towards the group. "Train station, Harjin Town, all aboard," the ticket collector yelled as he held out his hand to take people's tickets. Lucy and Gray stood next to each other, staring at Natsu with his backpack and sleeping bag. Happy was tumbling through the air once more, shouting out, "Aye sir," at random intervals. "So, is Urza usually this late?" Lucy asked the ice make user. Gray shrugged, his shirt unknowingly disappearing, which made Lucy very confused as she took notice of that fact. I don't know." Ever since Urza became an S-class, she usually started doing missions solo. Gray said. Natsu sniffed the air before turning around. She's here, he announced to his fellow travel companions. Lucy, Gray and Happy all followed the direction of the fire Dragonslayer's gaze before focusing on Urza Scarlet and the gigantic trolley that she was carrying, which had over 30 different types of suitcases piled on it. Hello everyone. I apologize for my tardiness. I was just finishing my packing for the mission. Lucy's sweat dropped as she stared at the tower of luggage. Urza. Isn't that a bit too much to carry for this mission? Lucy asked. Urza raised an eyebrow at that before staring up at her trolley. No, I wouldn't think so. Why? Lucy's sweat drop increased in size. No reason. She deadpanned. After putting away their luggage, a task that caused the train to take a 20-minute delay in trying to fit the entirety of Urza's things inside of the luggage car, they climbed onto the Harjin train. They took their seats and the whistle blew, signaling their leaving of the port town. However, not even 1 minute into the train ride, did Natsu start to experience his motion sickness. Lucy frowned as she stared at the moaning Dragonslayer. Is he going to be alright? I mean, I know he has major motion sickness, but he seems to be getting worse each time. Nah, he'll be fine. Gray said. He's always like this on a vehicle. Natsu said Igniel told him it was a common ailment for Dragonslayers to experience motion sickness. I see. Natsu was then held by Urza. It's okay, Natsu. Come lay down on my lap. Okay, Urza. The pink-haired firebrand complied, only to suddenly earn a punch to the gut. The pain was enough to knock him into blissful unconsciousness. Lucy, Gray and Happy gasped at the act before staring in shock at the Titania. Was that necessary? They yelled. He'll be better this way. Besides, I need to tell you all the details of this mission. Does Natsu being unconscious really help with that? Lucy asked herself. Urza gained a serious look as she watched the blonde girl and the black-haired boy before her. Happy was laying atop her head. So, what's this mission about? Gray asked, also taking on a serious tone. Urza, after throwing Gray an extra shirt from her requip that she kept for his stripping habits. Okay, well you see. You all know what a dark guild is, correct? The scarlet-haired woman asked. Lucy nodded. Yeah. Those are guilds who commit taboos such as stealing, exploitation, breaking the more extreme rules of the maging. Lucy gulped. Urza nodded in agreement. Yes, so you see. This mission involves the dark guild known as Eisenwald. They were, like all dark guilds, once a legal guild. However, Eisenwald began taking assassination and killing missions and thus they became labeled as a dark guild. This had continued for many a month, so they are still at large. However, it has been known that their ace, Aragorn, who goes by the alias, the Reaper, due to his use of a scythe when he kills. Urza snarled as she thought about the act of killing, an act which she wholeheartedly despised. What about Ergior? Gray asked. I had overheard it on the train coming back to Fairy Tale that Aragorn and the rest of Eisenwald are planning something. Something about an item called lullaby. There is no information such a thing as the only lullaby I have ever known is the song you sing to someone to put them to sleep. Lucy tapped her boot on the floor as she began to think. Lullaby. Lullaby. Where have I heard that before? She thought. Anyway, we are going to find Eisenwald. They are said to be hiding out somewhere in Anabu's town and I do not believe that I, alone, will be able to take down the entire guild. So, Lucy, Gray. You along with Happy and Natsu are going to help me with this task. Lucy's eyes widened in shock. You can't be serious. We can't take on a dark guild. I'm just a novice. Why am I even here? Lucy exclaimed. Urza turned to Lucy and gave her a small smile. You said you were a member of Fairy Tale, correct? Lucy blinked in confusion, but nodded. Yeah? Well then. I'm sure the master has told you that if you are a member of Fairy Tale, you treat everyone like family. Family sticks together and it is through our familial bonds that we will gain the strength to fight off the Dark Guild. You're a member of this family now, Lucy. I'm sure you'll do just fine in the fight to come. Urza encouraged the blonde newbie. Lucy stared at Urza with wide eyes before nodding with a confident smirk. Alright. Thank you for the vote of confidence, Urza-san, she said. The armored mage nodded. Anytime, Lucy. Right, now that Luigi here is ready, Gray spoke. It's Lucy, you dumbass stripper, the blonde interjected. Gray waved her off. Yeah, so let's get ready to kick Eisenwald's ass. Aye sir, the winged feline exclaimed. Anabu's town. Alright, we're here. Urza said as she, Lucy, Gray and Happy got off the train. After taking another 20 minutes to remove Urza's luggage, the train gave another whistle before leaving the station. Alright, so where is Eisenwald? Lucy asked. Urza took out her map from amongst the crowd of bags on her trolley before unfolding it. Well, they're actually supposed to be on the outskirts of the town, on the east side. Urza informed the blonde celestial spirit mage. The brown-eyed blonde nodded before the group began to head out. A few minutes into the walk, Happy realized something. Doesn't it seem a bit quiet to you guys? Yeah, it does. Natsu has been awfully key. Lucy's eyes bugged out of her head before turning to the others. They stared at the blonde as if she was insane due to her facial expression until they realized what she just said. They all facepalmed and facepawed in Happy's case. We forgot Natsu. Meanwhile on the train the fire Dragonslayer groaned as he lay there on the seat, having finally regained consciousness. However, as he got up, he looked to see a black-haired man wearing a white tuxedo. A white fedora was worn on the man's head, his beady black eyes holding a glint of evil intent. Well, if it isn't a member of a legal guild, fairy tale. The man chuckled. Natsu stared at the man, face looking a bit green due to the motion sickness. Who are you? Natsu managed to gasp out, clutching his turning stomach. My name is Kageyama, but I should let you know, I hate fairy tale. You guys are nothing but flies. You shitty fairies don't have an ounce of strength in you. Natsu glared at the man before he was suddenly kicked in the face. Natsu rolled on the floor of the train car before his shadow suddenly rose from up beneath him and took the form of a fist. Shadow magic. Fist. The fist slammed down on Natsu's spine, causing the son of Igneel to yelp in pain before he was hurled away once more. Natsu flipped in midair and skidded backwards before falling to his knees, motion sickness catching up to him once more. Damn it, he growled. However, as the tuxedo-wearing man walked up to Natsu, the train stopped. Natsu got up and grinned as he jumped away to avoid the blow from another hand of shadow. His fists then became enveloped in fire. Okay, let's get things straight. You do not insult my guild. I will show you how hard I'm going to hit you now that I'm all fired up. Natsu slammed his fists together as the magic seal formed in front of him. Karyu no Tekken. The flaming fist crashed into the black-haired man and sent him soaring through the air. Natsu leapt after him before slamming a flaming axe kick to the man's back. Kageyama let out a cry of pain before he suddenly sunk into the shadows. He reappeared behind Natsu before a dark violet magic seal appeared. Natsu turned, eyes widened in shock. Shadow magic. Hammer strike. The shadows sprung up and formed two hands. The hands clasped together before they swung back and sent Natsu flying through the air. Natsu managed to right himself and land firmly on his feet. He then sped towards the well-dressed man and performed a roundhouse kick. Karyu no Sume. The pink-haired mage kicked the man away and Natsu suddenly saw that Kageyama's tuxedo jacket opened a bit and he caught sight of something odd in the breast pocket. It looked to be made of wood and it seemed to have an area that was shaped like a skull. 3 purple gems, akin to eyes, were embedded in the wooden object. Looks like a flute. Natsu thought before he saw the black-haired man stand back up. Oi, Kageyugo. It's Kageyama, yeah whatever. What's that thing in your jacket? The man suddenly began to sweat. Shit, he saw the flute. However, the train started to move once more and Natsu, not wanting to get caught in motion sickness again, decided to make a jump for it. He blasted a hole in the side of the train car and leapt out of it. Kageyama watched the pink-haired fire mage soar through the air before shrugging. At least that brat won't know our plan. Hopefully the others from Eisenwald will be ready to carry out the plan. Kageyama said to himself. The train released another whistle as it sped off for Kunugi Station in Oshibana town. However, as the train was busy running its track, Natsu had luckily managed to find his friends, after having caused a massive headache for Gray. As Natsu had leapt from his transport of doom, the pink-haired mage had tumbled through the air, not realizing that upon realizing that he was missing, Urza had commandeered a magic four-wheeler and used her large magic pools to power the vehicle and allow it to move at high enough speeds to catch up to train and, by extension, Natsu. As they had done so, Natsu, upon leaping from the train, had begun to flip through the air in order to stabilize himself. However, Gray had chosen that time to get some fresh air by sticking his head out of the four-wheeler's sunroof, but as he did that, Natsu had been upside down and as a result, his forehead had clashed with near bone-shattering force with Gray's. Natsu still went with the momentum and fell off of the magic vehicle. Urza stopped supplying magic to the transport and the vehicle came to a stop, leaving skid marks due to the tires creating friction with the ground alongside the train tracks. Natsu! Urza yelled out in surprise as she slowly headed back over to Natsu's drop zone. Jumping off the four-wheeler, Urza picked up Natsu and shook him awake. The pink-haired fire mage immediately shot up, flames engulfing his fists. Huh? What happened? Where am I? Where's that beady-eyed bastard I was beating up? Lucy and Happy got out of the 4WH to Natsu before Gray came and punched Natsu. Oi, what was that for? That was for giving me a headache when you flew into me, Gray replied as he clutched his still paining cranium. Natsu rubbed his own head before blinking. Was that what I hit? Wow, Gray. Your head is like a piece of concrete. Gray scowled at Natsu, but Urza stepped between them before a fight could ensue. Now is not the time for fighting. Natsu, you said something about fighting some beady-eyed bastard? The salamander nodded to Titania before speaking. Yeah, he used some sort of shadow magic and he was carrying some kind of weird flute, Natsu said. Grr. Natsu, that was probably a mage from Eisenwald. Why didn't you tell us? She roared. Lucy walked up to Urza, sweat dropping. Urza-san. You knocked out Natsu when you explained to us about Eisenwald. Remember? Urza's eyes comically widened before she fell to her hands and knees. You're right. This is all my fault. If I hadn't knocked out Natsu, he would have known what he was dealing with and we wouldn't be in this situation. This is all my fault. Lucy's sweat dropped more when Urza suddenly sprang up and bowed to Lucy. I apologize for only caring about the mission and not thinking about my teammates. As such, I require punishment. Urza tilted her head up to look at Lucy. Please, hit me. EHHHHH. Lucy exclaimed in surprise. What do you mean I have to hit you? I put the team in a bad position because of my poor judgment. As a result, I need to be punished. So hit me. Lucy sighed at the overreaction of the scarlet-haired woman. Lucy reached out and tapped the woman lightly on the head, causing her to look up in shock. Lucy, I said to. I know what you said, but like you said, we are family. Family forgives each other for their mistakes. Now come on, we have to get to Eisenwald. That train is heading for Kunugi Station in Oshibana Town. Urza stared at Lucy in shock before nodding with determination in her brown eyes. Alright, everyone in the magic four-wheeler. Urza ordered. With a chorus of cries, they hopped into the vehicle and Urza reattached the SE plug before their transport zoomed off, leaving a cloud of dust behind them. Natsu? Lucy asked the pink-haired Dragonslayer. Yeah Lucy? You said you saw that the Eisenwald member you were fighting had a flute with him. Natsu nodded in confirmation. Tell me, did the flute look to be made of wood and had a three-eyed skull on it? Natsu thought for a while before answering. Yeah, come to think of it, it was exactly like that. Lucy's eyes widened before she bit her lip. Lucy, do you know something? Gray asked. Lucy, we need whatever information we can get, so please, tell us, Urza said, having overheard the blonde's conversation with the son of Igniel. Lucy gulped audibly before replying. That flute. That is lullaby. Lullaby is actually called by another name. The Song of Death. When lullaby is played, it is said to release a massive curse upon those who hear it, killing them almost instantly. I've only read about it, but that is lullaby, the death curse. Silence filled the four-wheeler for a while before Urza suddenly pumped a bit more magic into the SE plug. We have to hurry then. The vehicle put on speed and the four-wheeler roared, heading for Oshibana Town. Train station, Oshibana Town. The strongest team of Fairy Tail stopped in front of the Oshibana Town train station and looked around the area. It was very quiet, so it appeared that the citizens were probably evacuated since there were a few crowds of rune knights surrounding the train stations. However, as the four mages and one exceed neared the train station, they noticed the rune knights were laying on the ground. Urza ran up to a few of the nearest ones and rested on the knights' heads in her lap. Sir, wake up. We have a few questions. What happened? Who did this to you all? The rune knight in her arms, eyes wide open, gave her a blank stare. Urza stared at the man for a while before she rested her index and middle fingers against the man's neck. His blank stare sending chills down her spine. She frowned deeply as she rested the knight back on the ground. He's dead. They're all dead, Natsu informed the armored mage. Urza's eyes widened before she drew her sword, gripping it tightly. Who could have done such a horrible act as to kill so many rune knights? It could have been Eisenwald using lullaby, Gray suggested. No, they weren't killed by the death curse. The one I held. After realizing he was dead, I found that his neck had been snapped, Urza said. Some of these ones seem to have had their faces burned off, Lucy said as she tried to hold her stomach in check, but was finding it hard to do so. Natsu. These people were decapitated, Happy announced as he was floating in the air. Quickly, we better head inside. Eisenwald could be about to use lullaby and we don't know if the people of the town are still here. But if they are only in the train station, how could they be affected by the song? Natsu asked. Natsu, all train stations have an audio enhancer within them. This is what allows for passengers, even through the entire town if possible, to hear when a train is coming or leaving. If the people of Oshibana can hear those announcements, then they will be able to hear the song of lullaby when it is played, Lucy explained. The strongest team quickly went into the train station, however upon their entry, they gazed upon a sight that was not meant for such young eyes. What the hell? Natsu exclaimed. A few hours earlier, Oaktown. Phantom Lord was a large guild, equal in size to that of Fairy Tail. They had once been the #1 guild in Fury under the leadership of their master, Jose Porla. However, due to a certain incident at the last guild masters meeting in which Makarov literally beat the crap out of Jose for insulting Fairy Tail, even if the Phantom Lord master was in a drunken stupor, and also due to the fact that the once no-named guild had become exceedingly more popular than his, Phantom Lord was now tied with Fairy Tail as the #1 guild in Fury, and thus the two guilds now had a sort of rivalry with one another. Currently, Naruto had entered Oaktown upon picking up the scent of a dragon within the town. Seems to be coming from the Phantom Lord Guild. Naruto said as he sniffed the air once more. Kurama floated next to the blonde son of Agnologia. Well then, let's go. You can probably gain another member of your spy network and keep an eye on Phantom Lord. It's been said that Jose has been planning something big during the past few years when Fairy Tail began to catch up with them. I find it a stupid reason to combat each other, but at least destruction will happen should Phantom Lord make a move to attack Fairy Tail. Naruto said with a wide grin as he imagined the carnage that might ensue. True, so very true. The red-furred feline spoke. Naruto channeled wind magic into his feet and flew off with Kurama and landed atop the roof of the Phantom Lord Guild. Naruto sniffed the air once more before catching wind of the draconian scent he had found. However, what shocked him was that there were actually 2 scents present. Kurama. What brat? The crimson-eyed cat asked. It seems that there is more than one of them here. Kurama raised a non-existent eyebrow in curiosity. Really? Never doubt the senses of a dragon, furball. Naruto told the fox-costumed cat. Naruto walked along the rooftops of the castle-like guild, Kurama flying next to him. After a few seconds of walking, knocking the rooftop guards unconscious along the way as he didn't wish to rouse suspicion, after all. He needed members for his spy network and army, not people with an agenda to kill him. Of course Wind Dragon is an exception due to my inability to trust her completely. I will probably do the same for these 2. Naruto thought as he felt his cloak pocket where he kept the sealing tags which had the matrix for seal magic. AMA 56 emblazoned on their surfaces. Naruto then spotted the 2 he had been looking for and adjusted his face mask as he walked towards them. The first one was a muscular man who seemed to be as tall as he was, around 6 feet tall. He had long, slightly spiky, black hair and his skin was tanned. He had dark red eyes with slitted pupils, a feature that confirmed Naruto's suspicions about the man's Dragonslayer attributes. He had 3 studs lining either eyebrow and 3 studs on either side of his nose. He also had 2 studs on his chin. 4 studs were present on each forearm as well. A set of earrings, 5 in each set, were worn on either ear. He wore a black tunic with the ends of the sleeves, and the collar of the tunic being a light gray and appeared to be studded. A pair of white pants were tucked into the black boots that he wore. Said pants were also being held up by a black, studded belt. The man wore a pair of dark brown gloves which, like most of his clothing, had studs upon them. On his right shoulder, the man wore a wing-like attachment, held by studs. Naruto sniffed the air surrounding the man and nodded. Smells of reptile and some sort of metal. Most likely iron. Must be Metallicana's boy. Naruto hypothesized. However, Naruto caught whiff of another scent present on the Iron Dragonslayer. It smells like. Why does this man smell of Raventail? Naruto ignored it and decided to bring up that question when he was able to recruit both of them and then began to observe the second one. This one was a woman, around the age of 17 or 18. She had blue hair which flowed like a waterfall from either side of her head before curling up at the base allowing the hair to frame her face. She had dark blue eyes and pale skin. Although she wore some rather thick clothing, it still showed that the woman did have a rather curvaceous figure which made him wonder how she'd look in less thick clothing. She wore a navy blue coat which had a small black shadow lined with yellow fur that covered her shoulders and chest. A teru bozu was attached to the shawl. The woman wore a black, Russian Cossack hat and a pair of black boots. In her hand was a blue umbrella. She smells of reptile and rain. Rain is water ergo. If my suspicions are correct, that woman would be Levia's daughter, Naruto thought. As Naruto and Kurama began to draw closer to the 2, they noticed the clouds suddenly began to darken. Cumulonimbus clouds. The clouds then began to release a downpour and Naruto raised the hood on his cloak to keep himself dry, Kurama hiding beneath the hood as well. It seems the water dragon can't control her magic that well. If she had mastered them, she would be able to make it rain with only a thought, but she is doing it unconsciously. Her magic is leaking off of her in large amounts and condensing into water in the air to form the clouds and thus making it rain, Naruto said. I hate water. Kurama hissed, clawing at the raindrops as if they were flesh and bone. Naruto then stopped in front of the 2. The 2 members of Phantom Lord turned to face Naruto and immediately got into fighting stances. Who are you? The black-haired man snarled. We will not hesitate to stop you if you have come to attack our guild. Drip drip drop. The blue-haired woman said. Naruto looked at them, his eyes changing from blue to startling white, a change that shocked the 2 before him. I am not here to fight, but rather to make a proposition, Naruto said. Why would we help you? The man snarled, for 2 reasons. 1. I am in need of members for the spy network that I am in the middle of creating. I have 3 members so far and I need much more in order for this network to be successful, so I request you to join me. The second reason is because even if you 2 would fight me. Naruto released a pulse of magic power and killing intent towards the 2, causing their eyes widen in shock. The white eyes of the Mokushiryu no Byakugan seemed to shine brighter upon their gazes, being fixated on them. I can easily defeat you and end your lives without a second thought. But I won't, Naruto said. Who are you? The male Phantom Lord member asked. I am like you both. A Dragonslayer, Naruto said. The two people before the Apocalypse Dragonslayer gaped in shock. I know who you both are. Son of Metallicana, Dragon of Iron. Daughter of Levia, Dragon of Water. How did you? The male was interrupted by Naruto. Dragonslayers are able to recognize one another and I am able to differentiate what Dragonslayers you all are by your sense. He explained. The two nodded in understanding. Juvia is not one to abandon her guild. Juvia will fight if you try to hurt her guild, the woman said. Well, listen here, we aren't going to betray our guild for someone else. The Iron Dragonslayer spoke. Naruto nodded before grinning widely. Your sense of loyalty is admirable. However, I don't take no for an answer. Naruto suddenly vanished in a blur of speed and slapped on both Amaterasu seals on their stomachs. Both Dragonslayers stared in shock as they watched the seals sink into their clothes, and by extension, their flesh, vanishing as if they were never there. The two clutched their stomachs as they felt white-hot pain fill them. Naruto nodded before stopping the flow of magic to the seals. Those are powerful seals that will act on my command. A powerful magic known as seal magic. Amaterasu Formula number 56. They will fill you with extreme pain should I choose to activate them. Now you all can either agree to join with me, or I can make you feel pain like no other. Naruto raised his hand causing both Dragonslayers before him to flinch on instinct. Both the Iron Dragonslayer and Water Dragonslayer looked at each other before lowering their heads in defeat. Fine, but I'm not doing any stupid missions like killing for you or anything. Juvia agrees with Gajeel-san, the woman said. Naruto nodded. It is a spy network, so I will not be requiring you all to do anything such as killing. I will do that myself. Now then. I will need your names. You may know me as the Ogo no Fujin. Naruto threw back his hood and the lightning from the storm clouds flashed to reveal the golden blonde hair. Kurama was still hiding behind Naruto, trying to keep dry. The two Dragonslayers stared in shock as they stared at the most dangerous man in fury. Gajeel Red Fox. Juvia Loxer. The Ogo no Fujin. He looks no older than 20. How can this guy already be this strong at that age? Gajeel thought. Naruto threw back on his hood before handing Gajeel and Juvia 2 pieces of paper. Those are communication seals. Just send a pulse of magic through them and they will immediately allow you to communicate telepathically with me. I need you all to tell me if anything major will occur in Phantom Lord because I have heard from my other members that Jose is planning something regarding Fairy Tail. Naruto informed his new spies. Keep me posted on Jose's movements and what Phantom Lord is doing that you may find suspicious. The blonde suddenly felt a cold magic signature pass through him, cold like ice. Naruto turned, Kurama still hiding in his hood. I do not trust you all, and I know you all do not trust me as well. But if you ever wish to get those seals removed from you, you will do as I say and will do it without question. Also, if you try to rip those seals I gave you, I will know. I will see the act as treason and I will return here. And I will kill you. The increase in intensity of his shining eyes told the Iron and Water Dragonslayers that the Apocalypse Dragonslayer was not kidding when he said that. I expect to be informed once a week. Do not fail me as I do not appreciate failure. Naruto then vanished into the wind as he performed Shunpo no Kazejin. Juvia and Gajeel looked at one another and then at the pieces of paper in their hands. The rainwater seemed to slide off of the paper as if it were coated in plastic and the paper remained dry due to the waterproof seals Naruto inscribed itself. The blonde really knows what he's doing. No wonder he's so dangerous. Gajeel looked down at his stomach where the Amaterasu seal had vanished. Gajeel-san. Yeah, Juvia. Juvia wonders what we just got ourselves into. The daughter of Levia spoke. Gajeel sighed as he ran his hands through his wet hair as the rain from Juvia's uncontrolled magic continued to fall. I don't know, Juvia, but it ain't good. Edge of Oaktown. Naruto and Kurama stood atop a tree with one of the communication seals held in the blonde's hand. Naruto-kun? A familiar voice resounded through Naruto's mind as Naruto's informant spoke telepathically. Yes. Haku? Naruto said to the Ice Dragonslayer. The two hadn't talked in a while, but that was most likely due to the many espionage missions they had carried out for Naruto with respect to the criminal underworld and the dark guilds of fury. Due to them having spent 4 years together with Zabuza, training, Haku was one of the few people Naruto truly trusted alongside the people from Clover Town, Kurama and his swordsmanship teacher. As a result, the daughter of Glacia was able to get away with calling the Ogo no Fujin, Naruto-kun. Well, Naruto-kun. Zabuza saw. Haku paused. Tusan told me that on one of his missions that he had managed to get information regarding the dark guild known as Eisenwald. Can't say I've heard of them. The blonde thought back. Haku nodded on her end of the communication seal before speaking. Well, they are a dark guild that became as such due to having taken on a few assassination missions. The guilds consists of a little over 60 members, all of which use various types of magic, so there is no common magic amongst them. Due to being labeled as a dark guild, they've been planning revenge against the Magic Council. They plan to attack the guild masters of the legal guilds at today's annual meeting of the guild masters. Their ace and current leader, Aragorn the Reaper, a user of wind magic. He is said to have come across an ancient artifact. Continue. Naruto thought, his interest piqued. While it appears that the artifact is the lullaby flute. The flute said to contain the soul of a demon within it and was said to have been created by the black wizard Zareth about 400 years ago. I see. Well then, do you know where they are? Naruto asked. Haku paused for a while before replying. Well, I checked them out. Their main base of operations is located on the east outskirts of Anabu's town. I suggest you check there first, Haku said. Alright. Well done, Haku. Anytime, Naruto-kun. I'll keep you posted on anything else that I find out. Oh, and Naruto-kun? Yes, Ice Dragon? Haku rolled her eyes at the title she was sometimes given by Naruto due to her being Glacia's daughter. When you find Aragorn, show him how a real master of wind magic is supposed to be, will you? Naruto's eyes narrowed before the wind kicked up around him, causing the nearby trees to bend backwards, some of which had completely snapped and fell to the ground. Naruto flew up and took off with sonic boom. Do you really have to break the sound barrier? Yes. The blonde replied before a chuckle was heard from the black-haired Dragonslayer. Baka. The connection was then cut off and Kurama looked down at his partner. Who was it? It was Haku. Naruto replied as he flew off in the direction of Anabu's town. And, she got some info on a dark guild called Eisenwald. Apparently they have found an ancient weapon made by Zareth, the flute known as Lullaby. The one with a demon sealed inside it and is supposedly able to kill anyone who hears the melody. The very same. The Exceed gained a serious look on his face. So where are we headed? Haku said how that the main headquarters are on the eastern outskirts of Anabu's town. So we will head there first before taking Lullaby for ourselves. Why would you take Lullaby? You have more than enough power to kill anyone and everyone who comes across you. Naruto nodded. True, but that's not the reason. Zareth was a mage known to use living magic and death magic. The living magic aspect allowed him to change anything, a tree, a rock, even a leaf, and change it into a demon. However, it is known that living magic creates a link between its user and the demon. The only way the product of a living magic spell can be defeated is if you rid the user of the spell. Since Lullaby is supposedly still active and the spirit of Lullaby is still alive. Naruto paused. Kurama remained silent as he started to put the pieces of the puzzle together. His crimson eyes widened before looking down at Naruto. So what you're trying to say is that, but that's impossible. I have defied the impossible, so it may be possible for him to do so as well. Another sonic boom sounded and Naruto took off towards Anabu's town. Eastern outskirts, Anabu's town. Naruto walked forward through the thicket of dead trees, snapping the branches that got in his way. Kurama jumped off of Naruto's head before glowing crimson. The fox costume began to attach itself to his body, becoming a literal second skin to the Exceed. His body grew and lengthened. Bone and muscle structure changed before the light died down to reveal Kurama in his two-tailed Kitsune form. So what are we going to do? Just outright slaughter them all, or we go in, take Lullaby, kill who gets in our way and then get out? Kurama asked. Naruto's eyes changed from blue to white and his arms became coated in black and blue magic energy. The energy flickered around Naruto like they were made of fire and the Apocalypse Dragonslayer snarled. Slaughter them all. Kurama put on a large grin before his tails burst into flames and swished behind him. Excellent. Eisenwald Guild, alright. One of the members spoke. The others have gone to Oshibana town to start the Lullaby operation, so we're going to be here to keep watch over the guild. The other members nodded before doing their own thing. Some went off to play cards. Others started drinking beer and rum. However, as one of the members went to go get his rum, he realized the rum was gone. He frowned before looking at his empty mug and the empty barrel. Why is the rum always gone? The Eisenwald member frowned. Don't worry, Jack. It'll be back. Another member known as Will said to Jack. The two members shrugged at one another before a loud knock was heard on the door of the guild. The entirety of the guild became silent before one of the members walked up to the door. Are the others back so soon? The member asked. However, as he reached to open the door, a tongue of flame completely obliterated the piece of wood. The member that went to open the door was also burnt to ashes. Kurama ran through the flames and released a howl to the heavens. Naruto walked behind Kurama with a ferocious snarl on his face. The Eisenwald members stared in shock as they saw the two most wanted criminals in all of Fury, glaring at them. Alright, I'm going to say this once, and only once. Give me Lullaby and I will be merciful with you humans. Naruto announced. The mages gulped before Jack spoke. The others left with it. They went to Oshibana town to do the mission there. We don't have it, Jack exclaimed before dropping to his knees from the amount of killer intent that was leaking from Naruto and Kurama. You idiot, Why'd you tell him our plans? Will exclaimed. Because unlike you, I want to live. However, as Jack said that, his head was suddenly missing from the rest of his body. Naruto stood in front of the decapitated Jack, the body falling the ground with blood flowing from the neck and pooling around the body. Mokashiryu no Zanso, Apocalypse Dragon's decapitating talons. Naruto snarled before lashing out again, and this time, Will's head was gone. The dark blue and black magic energy, made into the likeness of Agnologia's talons, twitched before Naruto vanished in a blur of speed before he began to remove heads from the bodies of the Eisenwald members. Some members tried to run away, only FN in front of their path, and then he breathed a column of fire. The red flames engulfed their bodies and turned them into nothing more than charcoal. Kurama walked over the dead bodies, crushing the burned bodies as he allowed his body to increase in size. Now the size of a fully grown, male polar bear, Kurama lashed out with his flaming tails and impaled, burned and destroyed bodies. The screams echoed throughout the building during the attack by the Ogono Fujin and the Onibi Myobo. In a matter of minutes, due to there being at least 40 mages present within the guild out of the entire 100, the other 60 having left to go to Oshibana, the few survivors trembled in fear as they watched Naruto and Kurama. They crowded in the corner before Naruto snarled and raised his hands. Black and blue magic energy coated them before he slammed his arms together, and it took the image of Agnologia's twin spear-like tail. Mokashiryu no Soso, Apocalypse Dragon's twin spear. Naruto thrust his arms forward and completely destroyed one man's heart before Naruto tore his arms apart. The twin spear split apart as well, and the spears moved apart in a horizontal motion, slicing the other trembling members of Eisenwald in two. The bodies lay there, and Naruto looked at Kurama, who nodded. Kurama howled as a large ball of flame in his jaws. Hinotama, Kurama released a burst of flame from his mouth, and the spheroid of burning oxygen flew up to the roof of the Dark Guild. As soon as it made contact, Naruto and Kurama vanished into the wind and the sphere exploded outwards, becoming many smaller fireballs but with just as much of the destructive power. The flaming meteors crashed down upon the guild, and the Dark Guild headquarters was soon to be nothing more than burning wood and rubble. Naruto and Kurama, having reverted back into his Exceed form, flew through the air towards Oshibana town. While that was certainly a waste, Kurama growled out. Naruto nodded. Weaklings. All of them. None of them even tried to put up a fight, the blonde agreed. So, seems they're about to try out their new toy on the people of Oshibana town, the winged cat spoke. So it seems, Naruto said. Putting on a burst of speed, Naruto and Kurama became nothing more than blurs as they neared the town of Oshibana. Kunugi Station, Oshibana town. Naruto and Kurama landed a few feet away from the front of the train station building of the town of Oshibana. The Ogono Fujin watched to see that there were actually a number of rune knights surrounding the train station. Kurama's ears twitched and he sniffed the air. The humans and animals that lived here have been evacuated due to the rune knights. Apparently they know of Eisenwald's presence here. And the guards surrounding the station wouldn't have given you that idea? Naruto deadpanned. Kurama's sweat dropped at that thought. Just shut up and let's go take care of them. Kurama sighed before shifting into his three-tailed state. Naruto nodded and he adjusted his face mask. As the two neared the station, the rune knights caught sight of them. Hey, what are you doing? One knight yelled. This is a restricted area. Get away or you might die. Naruto and Kurama rolled their eyes. You're the ones who might die. Naruto replied. The rune knights' eyes widened as they finally recognized the Ogono Fujin and the Onibi Myobo. You two are. Naruto and Kurama grinned, though Naruto's wasn't visible due to wearing his mask. Prepare to die. Naruto sped forth and struck the knight in his neck. Naruto formed a small wind blade from his knuckle as he struck the man, and he severed his muscles and caused the man to become paralyzed before actually snapping the man's neck. Kurama jumped at another rune knight and bit down on the man's face. The rune knight released a howl of pain, alerting his fellow knights, and the 50 rune knights that had arrived to take down Eisenwald were now all assembled. It's the Ogono Fujin and the Onibi Myobo. Shit. They were labeled as flee-on-site criminals. If they are strong enough to take down Head Captain Han and Koko, then we stand no chance. The rune knight began to scramble and Kurama took a few steps forward, licking the blood off of his teeth. He turned to Naruto. Can I take these worms? Naruto nodded. Insert music. Fairy Tale Mistogun's theme. Fine, but first. Naruto vanished into the wind and appeared in front of 5 rune knight. He punched one in the gut before spinning and crashing his heel into the man's ribcage. The ribs snapped and allowed them to puncture his lung, and thus the man began to cough up blood as he fell. Naruto formed Kei's no Yaiba and sliced another man's arm off before throwing said limb at the 3rd rune knight. Using it as a way to blind his victim, Naruto leapt and appeared above the man before dive-bombing him. The man's skull caved in on itself from the force Naruto's boots met the skull, and his brain began to hemorrhage after kicking away the body. Naruto took a deep breath and breathed out a wind dragon. Futon. Furyuden spiraled through the air and completely shredded the 2 rune knights. Naruto smirked with twisted glee as he watched the bodies fall. He then looked at Kurama, who had went into his bipedal form. Lord Fox howled as he punched a hole through one rune knight's gut. He then spun on his heel and crashed a palm strike to one knight's nose and forced the cartilage upwards, stabbing it into his brain, and he was instantly killed. Kurama's 3 tails quickly ignited and he lashed out with them, as if they were whips, and burned the chests of 10 rune knights in one swift strike. He then leapt above the downed rune knights and released a large fireballs. Goukakyu. The large fireball exploded upon making contact with the bodies and killed them. Kurama landed within the flames before racing around at high speeds, snapping necks and burning faces. Fire rocket. Kurama slammed an elbow into one man's sternum, snapping it before grabbing the man and planting his face deep into the concrete before striking the man with a chop. The blow caused the man's neck to snap. Kurama looked to see 5 rune knights trying to escape and grinned. Vanishing in a flash of crimson, Kurama moved from his former location and appeared in front of those 5. He opened his jaws and took a breath. Kitsune no Konga. The blast from his mouth took on the shape of a fox head, its blazing jaws aimed to kill. And kill the kitsune did. The fox of flame completely engulfed the 5 rune knights and burned their flesh, superheated their armor, and caused the knights to literally have their flesh cooked within the armor. As the knights fell, Kurama took down another 5 by slashing their throats. He grabbed one of the downed rune knights before pelting the body at another who was trying to flee. The dead man's body slammed into the fleeing man's body, hitting his spine and causing it to snap. The man didn't have time to scream as his body was incinerated. Naruto kept the ones that Kurama failed to kill busy by easily snapping their necks as if they were twigs and tossing the bodies aside as if they were trash. 20 brave souls decided to try their luck at defeating the 2 SS class rank criminals. However, Naruto punched one in the face before grabbing him by his arm. He swung the man into his fellow rune knight, causing 3 of them to topple over like dominoes. Naruto then coated his leg with wind magic and raised it high in the air before bringing it down. Futon. Kazujiri. The arc of wind sliced the 4 rune knights to die instantly before Naruto vanished into the wind. The remaining 6 didn't know what had hit them, because when they all died was when Naruto reappeared in front of their downed forms. Necks snapped and blood pooling from their stomachs as Naruto had stabbed his wind blades through their stomachs. Kurama, let's wrap this up, Naruto told the bipedal kitsune. The red-eyed kitsune grinned before he raised his 3 tails. Fire began to form in a ring above Kurama as he swung his Naruto flew up into the air before Kurama latched onto the ring of fire and threw it. The fire ring flew through the air, bending to Kurama as well as it burned through the flesh of all the rune knights it touched before it vanished with a mere snap of Kurama's fingers. Okay, we get lullaby now that our warm-up is over, Kurama said before walking up to the door of the Kunugi train station. He kicked open the large doors and the members of Eisenwald stared in surprise upon seeing Naruto and Kurama enter the train station. Hey, who the hell are you? One member yelled. Naruto and Kurama looked around the room, staring at the 59 members of Eisenwald. Who I am is none of your concern, Naruto snarled, his eyes turning white and dark blue and black magic surrounding his body. The feeling of dread filled the room before a white-haired mage stood up. The white-haired man twirled the large scythe he held in his hands expertly before slamming the bottom on the ground. Well, listen here, punk. I don't know who you are and I don't care who you are. But know that we are the Dark Guild Eisenwald and we are about to destroy the Magic Council when we get lullaby. So run along before you get killed. Naruto and Kurama gave bored looks at the Dark Guild before sighing. Your magic power levels are rather unimpressive for people who claim they wish to take over the Magic Council, Naruto said before looking at the scythe-wielding mage. Especially yours, Aragorn the Reaper. The white-haired mage snarled as the wind suddenly began to pick up. Oh yeah? Aragorn roared before turning to one of his fellow guildmates. Raoul, show them how unimpressive we are. Raoul was shown to be a tanned man who wore a pair of dark green pants and a light blue t-shirt. Over the shirt was a yellow jacket that had dark blue sleeves. His head was covered with a black and yellow striped headdress. My Yurumi magic will end you, Raoul yelled. Suddenly, the black bands that the man wore around his fingers began to move on their own as if they were alive. The bands extended and became long cables that shot forth towards Naruto. The blonde snarled before grabbing the man's weapons, shocking Raoul. Unimpressive, human. Naruto reeled the man in. Raoul tried to take advantage of the momentum and aimed a kick towards Naruto's face. However, Naruto spun Raoul around before slamming him into the wall, hard enough to leave an imprint. Raoul was suddenly pulled from his place in the wall as Naruto controlled the winds to act as a suction. Raoul flew through the air before Naruto's hand was wrapped around his face. The blonde's eyes shone and Raoul stared into those fear-giving eyes. Die, human. Naruto crushed the man's face and the man was let go, blood leaking from his mouth and nose. Naruto then turned to the rest of Eisenwald and grinned. "I'll end your lives with one move." The black and blue magic surrounded Naruto's body, taking the image of Agnologia behind him. The Eisenwald members glared at Naruto, trying very hard not to piss themselves. Aragorn rushed forward, scythe held high. Wind magic. Stormbringer. A large magic seal formed in front of Aragorn's body, and the man made numerous movements with his left hand before spinning the scythe and making an upward slice with it. The air around Naruto distorted, and suddenly, a gigantic twister tore up the earth beneath Naruto and spiraled upwards, blowing a large hole in the ceiling on the train station building. The rubble fell to the ground and a large smoke cloud was kicked up from the attack. "Way to go, Aragorn," one mage yelled. "Yeah, I knew that punk wouldn't have been defeated by such a strong guy like you," another added. Aragorn rested his scythe lazily across his shoulder. "Yeah, the asshole really had it coming to him though, calling us unimpressive and weak." However, as the smoke cloud died down, Naruto stared at Aragorn with a ferocious growl coming from his throat. "You dare strike me? With the magic that I use? You're a pathetic wind mage, Aragorn. I will show you how a wind mage should be." Naruto roared before unleashing a large shockwave from his jaws with the roar. The winds from the shockwave sent many mages flying backwards, but Aragorn remained standing as he willed the winds to pass by him. "See, you can't beat me with my own element." Aragorn laughed. "I am unstoppable, and once Kageyama returns with Lullaby, we will be even more unstoppable." Naruto vanished into the wind and Aragorn stopped laughing upon noticing this. "Hey, where'd he go?" The members of Eisenwald watched as their ace mage looked around the area. Kurama chuckled as he reverted into his quadruped form and sat on his haunches. "Oi, Baka," Kurama called out. The mages all stared at the talking kitsune, three tails swishing behind him. "Look beneath you." Aragorn looked down and suddenly the earth cracked before a fist burst from the ground. The fist was coated with wind in the shape of a dragon's head and Aragorn stared in shock. The last thing he was the dragon's red eyes. Fuuton. Ran Ryuken, wind style. Storm dragon fist. Naruto yelled as the wind dragon around his fist gave a roar. The powerful uppercut crashed against Aragorn's fist and the man was suddenly sent flying through the air within the dragon's maw. His body was then sliced by numerous wind blades within the dragon's jaws before the attack ended, and Aragorn was now lacking his skin and his muscles were severed in numerous places. His dead body fell to the ground, blood spatter covering the floor. Kurama laughed as he watched the faces of the Eisenwald members before looking at Naruto. "Finish them." Naruto nodded to his kitsune partner. "Like I told you all." The image of Agnologia reappeared behind him as the magic of his adoptive father surrounded him once more. Eyes now a blinding white color. The magic rose up in the form of a small pillar. "I will finish you all off. With one move." The pillar seemed to appear as if it were made of black and blue fire due to its wavy appearance. Naruto clapped his hands together and snarled. The blue and black magic seal appeared in front of him and Naruto raised his foot. Mokashiryu no Kahaya, Apocalypse Dragon's devastation wave. He released a large wave from his body upon slamming his foot back down on the ground. The magic energy exploded out from his body in the form of a wave. The Eisenwald members tried to escape by launching various attacks at it. Most of them had done the sensible thing and tried to run, but they could not escape the path of destruction of the Apocalypse Dragonslayer's attack. The tiled floor was being torn up and the mages that were struck by the wave of pure magic had the magic energy within them, literally sucked from their bodies before being burned by the magic power. They all fell in one blow and Naruto looked at the dead bodies, all having been scattered due to his attack having sent them all flying in random directions. Naruto then turned to Kurama, who was observing Naruto's handiwork. "Can't say that I don't love those attacks of yours, brat," the kitsune commented. Naruto nodded before walking back towards the entrance to the train station from the train tracks. That Aragorn said that their other member was not here yet. And how that he had the lullaby with him. A train whistle was heard and Naruto and Kurama turned to see a man wearing a white tuxedo running through the doors, the lullaby flute in hand. Kageyama grinned widely as he held the flute high in the air. "Oi, guys, I got it. I got the flute, I got the..." The words froze in his throat as he gazed at the dead bodies. He then spotted Naruto and Kurama. "What the? Who are you two? Who here is none of your concern. However, give us the flute you have in your hand and we will be merciful." Kurama spoke this time. A talking kitsune. Blonde, blue-eyed man. "No way you're the Ogo no Fujin and the Onibi Myobo," Kageyama exclaimed. Naruto and Kurama rolled their eyes. "Well, you certainly are much smarter than your friends back there." Naruto bleeding body of Aragorn. Kageyama clutched the flute tightly before raising it to his lips. However, Kurama suddenly caused his tails to lengthen. One struck Kageyama in the arm, another in the stomach and the third in the chest. The blows caused him extreme pain as well as causing him to release lullaby. The wooden flute tumbled through the air before Kurama sprouted his fourth tail and caught the demonic flute of Zareth with it. Naruto vanished in a blur of speed before reappearing in front of Kageyama and raising the man off of the ground, hand wrapped around his throat. "You tried to kill us. You tried to play the flute, but guess what, human?" Kageyama stared with fearful eyes as Naruto's pupils became slitted. Dark blue and black magic snaked up his leg. "You can only try to kill the thing that will cause your death, and I am the cause of your death." Naruto snarled before slamming Kageyama into the tiled floor, leaving an imprint of his body in the floor. Naruto raised his foot and the magic seemed to flicker like it were fire. Mokashiryu no Jishinkyaku, Apocalypse Dragon Seismic Kick. Naruto brought the foot down on Kageyama and suddenly, a blast of magic burst through Kageyama's chest, tearing through his chest and through the ground. Kageyama coughed up a large amount of blood from the attack before his body fell still. Naruto stared at the dead body before turning to Kurama, who trotted over to him. "Hole through the chest. Nice touch." Naruto shook his head at the kitsune. However, just before they could leave, the duo heard the familiar yell of the son of Igneel. "What the hell?" Natsu exclaimed. "Fire dragon." Naruto raised an eyebrow at seeing the pink-haired mage again. You killed that man," Lucy shouted. Naruto looked down at the dead Kageyama's body before looking back up. "So what if I did? He had something I wanted and he resisted while trying to kill me with lullaby. I killed him for his foolishness." The entire group of fairy tale mages backed up in shock at the man's monotonous tone. "You're a monster," Gray shouted. "How can you just kill them like that?" The blonde and the kitsune sighed at the black-haired student of With very little difficulty, Naruto replied. Natsu snapped after that and his fists became engulfed in fire. "I'll kick your ass. You said that last time, and like last time, I will put you down on the ground." Naruto smirked beneath his mask. He formed a blast of wind and the attack shot towards Natsu. Natsu leapt over the attack and a red magic seal formed in front of him. Insert music. Fairy Tale Hagane Hakanetsu, Karyu no Kouen. The large blazing sphere shot forth towards Naruto, but the blonde Dragonslayer formed a Kase no Yaiba and sliced the attack in half. The other mages stared in shock while Kurama shook his head in disappointment at Natsu. "Seems the boy still hasn't grown any stronger," Kurama said. However, Natsu suddenly burst through his own attack, an unorthodox move that surprised even Naruto. "So, he has improved a bit." Naruto smirked as he looked into the dark eyes of Natsu. "But you haven't improved enough, Fire Dragon." Naruto grabbed Natsu around his mouth as Natsu prepared to use Karyu no Tekken. The blonde slammed his fellow Dragonslayer into the ground and the ground cracked from the force of the blow. Natsu growled before kicking out at Naruto, but the blonde leapt back to avoid the strike. Natsu spun on his hands, sending whips of flame after the blue-eyed wind user. Using the momentum from his spinning, Natsu got into a handstand and bent his arms and leapt off of the ground. His arms became engulfed his fire before extended outwards to take on the image of fiery wains. Karyu no Yokugeki. The wings slammed down on Naruto's location. The force of the attack sent Naruto skidding backwards before he sped forward. Natsu's eyes widened as a knee met his gut upon landing. Naruto then channeled wind magic into his fist and drilled a futon Rikuden into Natsu's chest. The attack sent Natsu flying through the air before Naruto appeared above Natsu and kicked the boy downwards. Natsu met the ground with a loud boom, only for a crater to form as Naruto fell after him and landed on the pink-haired boy's spine. Natsu released a scream of pain and Gray couldn't stand seeing his friend being beaten so badly. Ice make. Bow. A bow made of ice formed in Gray's hands followed by 5 arrows, all notched and ready to fire. Ice make. Arrows. Naruto looked up at the arrows of ice before Kurama jumped in front of the arrows and melted them to nothing but steam with a single blast of red flames. "I felt like doing something," Kurama told his Dragonslayer partner. Naruto nodded to the Exceed-turned Kitsune before Gray slammed his hands on the ground. Ice make. Lance. Numerous lances made of ice shot forth from Gray's attack and angled themselves towards Naruto. Kurama watched the lances speed towards him and Naruto. "You want it or should I? I'll take it." Kurama nodded and jumped out of the way as the blonde picked up Natsu. Naruto spun rapidly, Natsu groaning as his motion sickness occurred from the rapid movement. A tornado formed around Naruto. Futon. Tatsumaki. The tornado deflected the attacks and various areas of the train station were frozen over. Naruto stopped spinning and used the momentum to throw Natsu at Gray. Both fairy tale mages soared through the air upon meeting each other. Gray met the wall first and a spiderweb of cracks formed behind him. Lucy and Happy watched in shock at how easily both of them were taken down. Naruto turned to stare at Urza after taking down Fire Dragon and the weak Ice Mage. As soon as his eyes saw her he froze where he stood. "She looks like Ka-san," Naruto thought as he looked at the girl and saw Kushina's face replace Urza's. He shook his head to clear his mind of the thoughts of his mother before seeing the woman before him glow with golden light. "Requip. Heaven Wheel Armor." Urza cried out. Naruto raised an eyebrow at the sight before him. The woman had somehow become nude before she became clothed in armor made of what seemed to be entirely of blades. The breastplate of the armor was small and was composed of feather-shaped plates pointing upwards. The breastplate covered only the front and bottom of Urza's breasts, revealing a fair amount of her cleavage, and sported a large metal flower on the front, extending down along her hips, exposing her stomach. Well, at least she's not afraid to flaunt it, Naruto and Kurama thought as they looked at said cleavage. Her biceps are covered by straps seemingly made of metal, and her very large plated gauntlets sport feather-shaped plates at the edges. Her waist was circled by large, decorated plates similar to that of feathers that lay on a long skirt. Under said skirt her large, plated boots were revealed, however the majority of the boots were hidden, each sporting two small, metal ornaments shaped like wings. Urza also wore a neck guard made of feather-like plates around her neck and a tiara with prominent, jutting metal wings. The armor also sported two pairs of large metal wings which adorned Urza's back. The wings appeared to be composed of metal feathers which got longer and larger as they approached the edges. So, judging from how quickly you performed your requip, I will assume that you are Urza Scarlet, Titania of Fairy Tail, Naruto said as he fought back a nosebleed he felt from looking at her chest. And judging by your mastery of wind magic based on how you deflected my comrade's fastest technique, and the fact that you killed many men without even a hint of remorse, I will assume you are the SS class ranked criminal, Ogo no Fujin. Lucy and Happy gaped in shock. Gray and Natsu, who were rising slowly from the ground, were also in shock. He's the Ogo no Fujin. Lucy gaped. Urza, get out of there, he's a flea on sight, don't fight him, the blonde celestial spirit mage yelled. I would listen to your friend if I were you. Get out of our way and you will live, Titania. Naru the red had a chance to escape from facing him in a battle she'd surely lose. Urza snarled at the blonde man. You killed. That is an act that cannot go unpunished. The golden-haired man sighed before pulling back his sleeves slightly. Urza summoned forth two blades, one in each hand, and took on a ready stance. Why do you even care? These people were part of a dark guild who wanted to kill the council with lullaby. It's not like I killed a bunch of civilians or something, Naruto asked out of curiosity. Hearing the blonde's question surprised everyone including Kurama. Maybe that's true, but to just kill them without even giving them the chance to surrender after defeating them shows how cold you truly are, and as such I will not you go unpunished, Urza said as she resumed her stance. Naruto narrowed his eyes. Very well then, since you are a swordswoman and one of the best from the rumors I've heard regarding you, Titania. As a swordsman's courtesy I will also fight with my blades. You're going to get your ass kicked then, windbag, Natsu yelled. Urza's the best with a sword. No one can beat her. Naruto chuckled at the pink-haired mage before pumping magic into his wrists where the seals for his mother's blades lay. Silver and gold magic seals appeared in his hands. Seal magic. Release. He muttered. In a flash of gold and silver, Ascalon and Excalibur appeared in his hands. Urza's and Luce's eyes widened in shock upon seeing those two swords. How did you get those swords? Urza yelled, red with rage at seeing a murderer wielding sacred swords. They belong to someone I respect. They are mine now, Naruto said before flicking his wrist, and Ascalon and Excalibur burst into silver and gold flames, respectively. What are those swords? Natsuha and Gray asked. Lucy turned to the two clueless mages. Though she noticed Gray was once again missing his shirt, she ignored it to explain. Those swords are said to be the blades crafted by the legendary first mage known as Merlin. The with silver flames is Ascalon and the golden one is Excalibur. These swords have flames that are said to rival a dragon's own and are sharp enough to even puncture a dragon's hide. Those swords are said to have killed over 1,000 warriors by the hand of the first mage during one of the great wars in Earthland's beginnings. Natsu's eyes widened. Something that could kill. Even Igneal, he gasped in disbelief. Correct, and you're about to see firsthand why, Naruto said after hearing the blonde female mage explain his sword's history from legends. Urza leapt at Naruto and brought one blade down upon him, but he raised Ascalon and sliced the blade in two a moment after it made contact. He then turned and raised Excalibur, bringing the golden blade down on the requip user. Urza jumped back before stabbing her second blade at Naruto's chest. The blonde raised Excalibur and the tip of the sword was now red due to the extreme heat. Urza leapt back, flying for a short distance as Naruto aimed a downward diagonal slice at her. Urza summoned forth her ring of swords, 20 blades which circled behind her. The blades began to spin rapidly before forming a shining disc as the blades reflected the light of the sun. Dance my blades, she cried out, circle sword. The ring of blades shot forth towards Naruto, but the son of two wizard saints raised the ancient swords and held them in an X shape. Orange sparks flew as Naruto held the swords at bay, however he was slowly being pushed back due to the force that was exerted by the blades. Urza used her telekinetic abilities to push her swords forward more, but Ascalon and Excalibur were made to be practically indestructible if not literally invulnerable to damage. Naruto then smirked before he pushed a bit of magic into his swords and the gold and silver flame shot forth in a fast-moving blast. The attack shot towards Urza and the red-haired mage flew out of the way only for Naruto to appear in her face. He raised Ascalon and brought the silver blade down on her shoulder. The blade tore through her armor and sent her to the ground, her shoulder now bleeding. Urza summoned forth 2 more swords and had 10 more circling behind her. She lashed out with a dance of shining steel. She quickly slashed at Naruto with an upward diagonal attack, but Naruto leaned back before aiming a kick to the face. Urza blocked with the flat of her second-held sword before using of her floating swords to hit him. Naruto pushed off of Urza's held sword and sent an arc of golden fire that melted the sword. He then jumped high and slashed both blades. Arcs of silver and gold fire flew towards Titania, but the Fairy Queen leapt to the side and avoided the attacks. However, the blast wave from the attack sent her skidding backwards. Taking advantage of the smokescreen, Urza flew up to get a bird's eye view to strike her opponent. However, Naruto sent a tongue of silver flame at the scarlet-haired swordswoman. Urza quickly re-equipped and changed into her Flame Empress armor. She swung her fire sword and blocked the attack, but Naruto sped forth and crashed an elbow into her stomach. The armor cracked from the force before the blonde twisted in midair and struck Urza in the chest with another elbow strike. He twisted once more and sent her flying with a spin kick only to follow up with a blast of silver fire. Urza didn't have time to dodge, so she raised her orange blade and took the attack. The damage done was reduced by 50%, but it still packed enough of a punch to send her flying through the air. She flipped in midair and pushed off of the wall, her wings flapping a mile a minute only for Naruto to appear above her and slam his heel down on her. Urza raised her sword and blocked the attack before pushing Naruto's foot away and sending a blast of orange fire from her sword. Naruto sliced the attack in half with Excalibur before bringing Ascalon down upon her. Urza was struck and blood sprayed from her stomach as she was hit with the horizontal slice. A stab to her stomach before being sent to the ground by a blast of silver flame ended the battle for her as she formed a crater from the landing. Naruto fell after her and he aimed the blades to kill Urza, but a quick ice make, lance from Gray, denied him the pleasure. Naruto twisted and sent a blast of gold fire at the lances and turned them to nothing, not even a puff of steam formed. The son of Agnologia looked at Urza and his eyes narrowed. "Somehow I expected more from you," Naruto said with some disappointment evident in his voice. He had expected Urza to put a better fight after hearing the rumors on how she was a powerful swordswoman. The fight was a letdown. She had lasted a while against him and showed skill with her swords, but she lacked the high level of magic power to make her attacks strong. Naruto kicked the downed Urza over so that she lay on her back, having landed on her stomach. Urza coughed up a bit of blood before opening her brown eyes and glaring at Naruto. "You're a despicable being. You killed members of your own race. You're a human just like us. What gives you the right to play God and kill WHO you wish? WHO or you to say WHO is strong and WHO is weak?" Naruto narrowed his eyes as he stared at the scarlet-haired woman before raising Ascalon and Excalibur preparing to bring them down on her. Urza shut her eyes preparing for pain only to feel nothing. She opened her eyes to see Naruto had stopped from lowering his blades to claim her life. He looked like he was shaking as if he was having trouble moving for some reason. "What's wrong with my body, why won't it move?" Naruto thought to himself as he couldn't move his body to finish of Urza. Suddenly he saw his mother's face once again replace Urza's as it matched her pained expression. "Am I unwilling to kill her because she resembles my mother?" he asked himself as his mind wandered back to when he dreamed of his parents. He managed to shake himself as he saw that he could move again now that he wasn't trying to kill Urza. Seeing no reason to continue, he began to walk away silently. "Where are you going? We're not done yet," Urza said as she struggled to get up. "You're a fool, Urza Scarlet. I do not play a god, for even I know that I am not on the level of the divine beings, even if my title suggests that I am one. You are a fool to think I cannot judge who is weak and who is strong. You are weak, Titania, because you do not have the will and the guts to kill. Killing is part of what we can do. You fairy tale mages are bound by your idiotic morals and the ability to think that you can live life without having to kill anyone." Urza's eyes widened at that. "We can do that. You're a human as well, and how dare you think you are above us? You are a I am greater than any human on this planet," Naruto roared. His patience with Titania's ideals was rather thin and she had already broken through the thin layer, and now Naruto was unleashing his full fury with his words. "Open your eyes, Titania. Humankind cannot go one day without doing something that will result in the death of another. I killed these members of Eisenwald and so have many other members of dark guilds." Naruto snarled, his magic energy spiking and making Urza experience the feeling as if the force of gravity had increased times 5. "You are an idiot to think that we can live the life that mages live without having to kill. Life does not give us that luxury," Naruto snarled, chest heaving from yelling. Urza blinked before she was suddenly met with a windblade hovering an inch over her face. "Oi, blonde weakling and the cat," Naruto called out to Lucy and Happy. The celestial spirit mage and Exceed gasped as she felt Naruto's piercing gaze on her. Kill Fire Dragon and the ice mage over there or Titania dies. Everyone's eyes widened in shock. What? Why? Lucy was unable to make a proper question from the myriad of thoughts flowing through her brain. Naruto snarled before stabbing his windblade forth. You just killed your comrade. Urza's life flashed before her eyes before she suddenly heard the sound of the earth being sliced open. She looked to her left to see Naruto had stabbed the ground with his windblade, a few centimeters from her head. Naruto narrowed his eyes at seeing he didn't kill her. Something made him avoid doing it. He didn't know what it was, but he decided to check later once he left. This is the truth of life, Titania. Enemies will not give you the chance to live and will do whatever they can to ensure they survive and will be able to stay out of the jaws of the law. You're an idiotic fool to believe that you can go through life without killing. Naruto stopped the flow of magic for his windblade before turning around and walking off with Kurama and the lullaby flute in hand. Urza's eyes widened before she coughed up a bit more blood. Natsu glared at Naruto's retreating back before unleashing a blast of flames. Kurama turned and ate the dragon fire before snarling at Naruto. Where the hell do you think you're going? The damaged son of Ignale roared. We're the strongest team in Fairy Tail. Don't turn your back on us. Natsu wheezed as he clutched his ribs in pain. Naruto snorted at that. The strongest team in Fairy Tail? If this is the strongest team your guild has to offer, then I am sorely disappointed with how weak Fairy Tail is. Your strongest team consists of. He looked at Lucy. A weak, useless celestial spirit mage that most likely cares more about her looks than actually getting stronger to actually help you all in your missions. He then turned to Gray. A washed-up ice mage who has a tendency to strip his clothes. He then turned to Happy. An Exceed with absolutely no power. Happy frowned at the man's words, but an afterthought lingered in the back of his mind as to what was an Exceed. Naruto then faced Urza. The supposed strongest. He spat out the word as if it were acid on his tongue. Female mage in your entire guild, only for her to reveal that she is nothing more than a re-equipped mage with various armors and is only an amateur sword user. And then there's you. Fire Dragon. The Salamander, the son of Ignale, the Fire Dragonslayer of Fairy Tail. Who can barely even keep up with the other Dragonslayers. I have met those others, Natsu, and I have trained one of them. She is 12 years old by now, Natsu. And she has more skill and strength in her hand than the amount you hold in your entire body. Your attacks are weak. You are as slow as a tortoise. You are a disgrace to our race. Natsu Dragneel. You are a complete waste of a Dragonslayer. Naruto looked at the crestfallen group, his words making more of an impact than he would ever imagine. If you want to really be known as the strongest team in Fairy Tail, then get stronger, start taking your training serious, and maybe if you actually take your jobs as mages seriously instead of fooling around in that little clubhouse you call a guild, you'll be able to actually get somewhere in your pathetic lives. Naruto turned and walked off with Kurama. Strongest team in Fairy Tail, Naruto growled. You are nothing but disgraces to the magical world. Naruto grabbed Kurama and the two vanished into the wind with the demonic flute of Zareth. Urza, Natsu, Lucy, Gray and Happy all looked down at the ground with shocked and sad looks on their faces. The words Naruto had said had made a huge impact on them. Lucy and Happy had tears flowing like streams down their faces. Gray was clutching his knee, but his knuckles were white from the tightness of the grip. Urza was frowning deeply with a few tears lining her non-prosthetic eye. Natsu was hunched over on all fours and was beating the ground with his fist for a few seconds, yelling out, "Damn it," for a while. The blonde had been cold, ruthless and merciless in his entire speech and how he said all those things. His views on killing. His views on their guild. His views on them. He said it all without a hint of remorse. But the thing that shocked them the most was what the five of them thought as they processed what he just said. A thought that not even they thought they would ever think. He called them weak. He insulted them. He insulted their guild. But after seeing and experiencing how easily the SS class ranked mage had disposed of them without even breaking a sweat or receiving a scratch, they could only think one thing. Is he right?